Hey there, Smite fans, Aggro here. Look, every single year, the SPL just keeps getting better. Season 7 was incredible, and in Season 8, I'm sure our players are gonna take their game to the next level. But in order to do that, they're gonna need the best gear they can get their hands on. And that's why I'm so excited to announce that the title sponsor for Season 8 of the SPL is Alienware. Yeah, that Alienware. Our players are getting the best of the best in computer gaming. These Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition PC setups are insane. Not only will these be the PCs that the players will compete on once we are in studio, but Alienware is also providing one for each player at their home setup to make sure their practice is as good as possible. Now let's get down to brass tacks. The specs on these Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition desktops are amazing. An AMD Ryzen 9 16-core processor.
That's a lot of cores.
That's plenty of processing power.
That's plenty of cores.
If you want to stream, this is the way to go.
I know a lot about my cores, so. I mean, Pilates, right?
64 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM.
What? Is that true?
That is true.
I mean, this thing has 64 gigs of DDR4 RAM.
Which you can do literally anything with.
Literally anything.
I've never had more than 16 gigs.
That's quadruple the amount I have at home.
And one of the hottest commodities in the PC world, an NVIDIA GeForce 3090 graphics card.
Insane how much better this is than what I have.
The best graphics you really need, Ultra, of course.
Content's gonna look good.
And what's the point of all the power if you can't see it? Players will also be using the Alienware 25-inch 240 Hz monitors.
Man, when I load into scrims with this bad boy, I'm gonna feed so hard. And it's gonna be in perfect picture quality.
We are so excited to be partnering with Alienware for Season 8 of the SMITE Pro League. And the best part is, this VIP treatment, it's not just for the pros. You too can get the best possible SMITE experience. Just go to smitegame.com/Alienware and use code SMITEAW to get special discounts on some of Alienware's best products. Thanks again to Alienware. Make sure you're following them on Twitter and Instagram. That's at Alienware on both platforms. And you can join their community at alienwarearena.com.
And you're telling me an alien wore this?
Happy Saturday, Smite fans. You are watching the SPL, and we've got some great matchups for you here today. It's, of course, the SPL, sponsored by our friends over at Alienware. We couldn't do this without Alienware, so we always want to give shout-outs to them. Make sure to follow them on Twitter and Instagram at Alienware, and then join their growing global community at alienwarearena.com. But if you want some of the gear that the pros have been talking about, the 64 gigs of DDR4 RAM, all that sort of fun stuff, make sure to head on to smitegame.com/Alienware and use code SMITEAW to get your hands on some as well. As you might have seen with the nice floating crane shot we had there, Taco joins me on the desk to start off the day here today. Taco, we had a quick day yesterday. Some lopsided matchups there in that one. Some what could be closer matchups here today.
A little bit of unfortunate circumstances throughout yesterday's sets, but today is an entirely different narrative here, Dolson. I am particularly excited to see how this Jade Dragons Oni Warrior set kicks off, and then the Atlantis Leviathans versus Tartarus Titans. That's always going to be a very impactful set for both of those teams. Titans trying to, charge onwards up the standings, and Atlantis Leviathans, they want to maintain that first seed spot tiebreaker with the Olympus Bolts.
That's very important, that final point there, the Leviathans keeping pace with the Bolts at 3-0. Jade Dragons versus the Oni Warriors, that'll be our first matchup here today. In two teams that are closer in the standings than maybe either of them would have bargained for going into this, I don't know, we're not halfway through Phase 2, but this point in Phase number 2. The Jade Dragons at 1 and 2, the Oni Warriors also at 1 and 2. So there's a little bunch in there at 4, 5, and 6 where there could be some shifting around today depending on how Tartarus Titans, Oni Warriors, and the Jade Dragons end up doing in their matchup. And I think that's such an interesting point we'll get to with the Dragons, sort of their inconsistent start. But the wheels are starting to turn for this team again. On the other side, the Oni Warriors, they have the same record there at 1 and 2. I don't know if they feel as confident, or maybe fans or viewers or we feel as confident in the wheels being back on that bus just yet.
The primary consistency factor for the Oni Warriors is always talks about Nika in the solo lane. He has just been such an impactful player for this roster, whether they're finding success in their sets or not. And the primary storyline I think here today, Dolson, is the fact that, obviously Jade Dragons not having the sort of start that you would expect from a team that's been regarded as such a powerhouse roster here in Season 8. But then again, you have to remember the team has been relatively honest with themselves and honest with us on their interviews, mentioning things like, hey, we're not really prepping as much as we would like to, or maybe as much as we need to. I expect that to be a complete 180 shift here today, because there's a lot of respect between these two rosters. Both these teams consider each other to be formidable opponents, in my mind, Dolson, and I think that this could really go either direction here today.
It could, depending on who ends up showing up, and I think I like the way you started off that there with talking about Nika and how stalwart of a presence it feels like he's been for this team. We wondered where King Arthur would start to fall in this meta a little bit with so many changes coming into the game and things like that, and apparently King Arthur still feels pretty good for Nika. The ability to just control that front line probably just makes every other aspect of the game easier for the Oni Warriors.
I think the main thing I want to see from the Oni Warriors here today is Nika is going to be able to establish pressure. Whether he's able to find that direct pressure in the laning phase against Fino-K is a different story within itself. Granted, Fino being such a phenomenal soul laner as well, but it's more so the circumstances where we oftentimes see Nika going for these huge setup opportunities, and then there's no follow-up for the Oni Warriors. So if they can find that communication to really have that solid connection each time that Nika is looking for those moments, I think that we could see an entirely different Warriors roster.
I think it is worth mentioning the Oni Warriors have played the Bolts, the Leviathans, and the Valkyries. So they beat the Valkyries 2-0, but then the other two undefeated teams are the two losses that the Oni Warriors have had so far here in Phase 2. That's worth looking at. It's been a tough road for this Oni Warriors team as far as the opponents that they draw. Nika, man, we've been talking about, joins me now for the pre-game interview. We'll see what the thoughts are like for Nika going into this game. Nika, thanks for sitting down with me as part of this big matchup. Look, I brought it up to Taco there. You guys have played the Bolts, the Leviathans, and the Dragons in your first 4 games, and the Valkyries, the other one there as well. Tough as far as the opponents go in the first few games there. Did you assume that this was going to be a bit of a tough start to the phase, just given the opponents that you guys have?
I guess a little bit, like on paper, right? Like those teams have just been playing better, and whenever you go into like a new meta as well, you never know how long it's going to take to adjust to that. And especially with like the circumstances we're in, like maybe it's taken a little bit longer, but I think we're slowly getting there. Like the weakest scrims we had was pretty good. Like I think we figured out how we want to play a little bit. So expecting to put that into the real games today.
Well, you've been a pretty consistent driving force here for this Oni Warriors team. You don't have to reveal too much. I always like to give that precursor. Is there anything specifically that you guys realize, all right, this is the piece of our game that's been missing? To beat the Dragons, we've got to work on this. Is there any sort of filler there for you guys, or is it an all-around improvement type of thing?
I mean, there's a lot of like big things. Doesn't really matter if you give it away. I think most of it's just been like more consistent map play and like being on time for buffs and stuff like that. That's what like the top teams are doing so well right now. Like you can't really give them an inch, they'll take a mile, and we haven't really been doing that as well, or like as consistently. Yep. So that's the main thing that we've had to work on, I think.
Well, we saw those moments from you guys. Sorry, excuse me, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, I'm done.
Oh, okay. We cut each other off. Well, look, we saw those moments from you guys in the Phase 1 playoffs, and I think consistency key for the Oni Warriors team. Thanks, Nika, for sitting down with me, and best of luck.
Thank you.
Sure thing. And a tall task is the way I've worded this one, going up against the Dragons. Specifically for Nika in lane as well. He's got Fino-K to go up against here today. Taco, it's such an interesting time to, I think, analyze this Jade Dragons team, because they've gone up against some very good opponents. They'll have the Bolts tomorrow in a very big matchup. The consistency for them as well. That seems to be the name of the game for basically every team in the league right now, minus the Bolts, the Leviathans, and maybe even the Kings, where everyone else is like they've shown these moments, just haven't quite gotten there. What's your take on the Dragons?
Well, I like the fact that Nika actually touched on the discussion of a lot of the top-end teams right now. They're just being really precise when it comes to map presence and control, being on time for all of those buff timers, being on time for the objective spawns, looking for those early pools of the Gorps and the Forps. That's the main direction, I think, that we've been seeing from a lot of those top-end teams that kind of funnel more into the map pressure itself. And Jade Dragons are certainly a team that loves having that sort of control, and a lot of that does tend to stem out of one of their side lanes. And obviously with Nika having to deal with Finoke in that solo side of the map, you know that Fino's definitely going to be looking for that totem presence. He's definitely going to be looking to try and control just about everything on that side of the map.
And I think the meta conversation that Nika had there as well is important to look at for Finoke. Finoke's picked up the Odin a couple of times. I wonder if that's something we'll see moving forward today. 5-1-6 in the opening Odin game for Finoke. 2-0-9 in the second Odin game for Finoke. And we'll see a little bit of those highlights right now. And I think that's important to look at for Fino, is the flexibility and the type of play style that he has. Obviously, Warriors want to do Warrior things. But despite some struggles that the Jade Dragons have had in the start of Phase 2, I think Finoke has shown us that he's adapted to the new meta pretty well.
And one thing that's a little bit more evident with Finoke's playstyle as well this far in Season 8 is that he does have a little bit more of a tendency, I think, to look for the team fighting matchups. He's not necessarily going to try and take a crazy lane bully type of warrior or guardian for that solo side pressure. He's just going to be looking for that control and separation factor throughout engagements. And so that introduces, I think, a kind of a fun dynamic, because when you look at Nika, he is predominantly tended to kind of, I wouldn't say rely, but he certainly has a preference towards more of the lane bully. So I'm almost wondering if there could be a little bit of a switch up here for Fino, because he doesn't want to let Nika have full control of that laning phase, just in case it might funnel into more map pressure.
That's a great point. I think the solo lane will see some priority, as it always does, but maybe extra priority for the Oni Warriors and picks and bans today, and Finoke as well. I think Odin is going to get something that, or be something, excuse me, that ends up getting looked at. I do wonder, because of the performances that Nika's had on this King Arthur, 2-2-6 in 6-0-10 and 0-3-3, so not incredible on a couple, but very, very good on one or two. Do you think that's something the Dragons have to look towards? This King Arthur is still in a strong enough spot where whether ban or pick, or at least just game strategy, have some sort of plan around Nika's King Arthur?
I'd almost expect a little bit more of that frontline preference for, as far as the bans are concerned, at least for game number 1 here. Jade Dragons being in that first pick position as well does give the Oni Warriors at least a little bit of insight to see what direction their draft might be headed based off that first pick choice, but I'm kind of anticipating some looks towards Fafnir and Amir here out of the Jade Dragons. Seems as though they want to start things off hot, though, with an immediate takeaway of that Morrigan. Just not going to provide any sort of opportunity for Dardas to get a slight comfort pick here.
Mercury continues to be a mainstay as far as bans go up against the Jade Dragons. It seems like Sanford Soccer is just not going to get the opportunity to play the pick the way that he impacts the map, and we know that he loves those dual lane ganks underneath the tier 1 towers with their Mercury all the way across the lane, so we won't be seeing any of that in game number 1. Fenrir takes a seat alongside the Ymir. Look, Neil has struggled, as the rest of the Oni Warriors team have. Not a standout struggle necessarily for Neil, but a strong pick, I think, in the Ymir. Probably smart for the Dragons to take that away.
Jade Dragons also looking to eliminate that Raven, so a lot of dive and just chaos essentially being stripped away here from the Jade Dragons' initial bans, and I do think that that's smart given the play style that the Oni Warriors have revealed so far, Dolson. They have a tendency to look for those big flank opportunities. They have a tendency to try and create a lot of chaos throughout engagements so as to give Dardas and their backline in general a little bit more room to work with. But Fafnir actually going to be the direction here from the Oni Warriors, so I thought it would have been Jade Dragons looking to take away both of those, but I do like this even split And the jungle focus as well, clearly evident here from the Oni Warriors. We have seen Sam kind of lean towards more of that utility playstyle, though, with the Humbatsus and the like. So I'd imagine that this is relatively open-ended so far for the Jade Dragons. Yamoja still nearly up for grabs, and I don't think that they necessarily have to lock in a solo laner this early on, but if they're looking to try and give their backline a little bit more insight as to where the front line is headed from the Oni Warriors, they could just look to withhold their picks for now.
And I like that you bring up the Yamoja, because the Ymir banned out, of course, by the Dragons. Fafnir taken away by the Oni Warriors. 4 of the last 6 games, Mike has played either Ymir or Fafnir. It's been Hercules and Yamoja on either side. Tiamat left open. This has quickly become a popular pick for Hurrywind. He's looked great on this pick out of the mid lane. A lot of mid laners in the SPL have. Last 2 games, actually, Hurrywind played this Tiamat, both games against the Valkyries, 8-0-11, 6-1-8 on the first game in that set, and then a win against the Leviathans. The only win in the last set against the Leviathans was also Tiamat for Hurrywind, so 1-1-12. Interesting, then, that the Oni Warriors give that pick over to Hurry, given such recent success. And I would say if this Osiris gets locked in, it's a solo lane pick, but we have seen it sometimes out of the jungle. So a little flexibility maybe then for the Oni Warriors.
It's also just the fact that I think the Oni Warriors, knowing that the Tiamat was probably going to be a heavy priority here for the Jade Dragons, there is still an opportunity to look for a Gilgamesh in response. I'd imagine that the Oni Warriors don't want to let the Jade Dragons have both of those, so Gilgamesh will be their primary reflex pick, but I also have a tendency to believe that the Oni Warriors, they're a team that tends to play up to the standards of what their direct opposition is, and the Emoja lock-in, no surprises really. I think that will be an excellent acquirement there for Neil Ma, and it introduces a lot of that whole dive the backline mentality here.
Yeah, I think that's strong, and again, that's a pick that Mike has gone to, and the Ymir and the Fafnir have been taken away, so we'll have to see something a little bit different for Mike here this game. The Hercules gets picked. That's something similar to his last 6 games. If it's not a Hercules, it's something a little bit different. How about this, though? The Awilix locked in. 1 game played, 100% win rate, and the Jade Dragons, they feel like game number 1 here against the Oni Warriors is a chance to expand that win rate a little bit further.
And I can't blame Sam for wanting that Sawilish.
Yeah,
Feather Step, incredibly strong. She's able to negate that drop kick out of the Gilgamesh if the timing is correct. And it's a fairly easy one to beat Gilgamesh on the timer 4. So a lot of outplay potential, I think, so far with this Sawilish. Also going to make those Riptide escapes for the Yamoja a little bit more problematic. Have to remember that Riptide does provide an opportunity for Gravity Surge to go off. And then obviously Gilgamesh's Hero Escape not going to be as prime of an escape opportunity, given that Awilish can also pull him back in. But all of this backline and burst damage introduced now for the Jade Dragons, they really need to look, and I'm expecting gold. Yeah, the Odin ban's already taken place here for the Oni Warriors. That would have been great to try and corral this Oni Warriors team, but I think that there is still a possibility that we could see the likes of perhaps an Ares or a Xing 10 as a solid initiation factor for the Jade Dragons.
Yeah, both teams have kind of flip-flopped as far as pick priority goes here. Both junglers, we're assuming, get locked in, but then it's backline and damage as far as mid and hunter for the Jade Dragons, then it's support and solo lane on the other side for the Oni Warriors. So you'll see that reflected in the bans, of course. Kabrakan taken off the table, Raijin on the other side also is going to get taken away from Dardes here. So the Jade Dragons still a lot to work with and maybe worry about in the hunter and mid lane pool for the Oni Warriors. It's kind of a unique position, really, for both sides, I guess, where the Oni Warriors now can kind of cater their mid and hunter picks around the engage in the Jade or the engage in the initiation maybe that the Jade Dragons are building.
Giannis is a potential here though for Dardes. Hasn't been banned by either side. Clearly Jade Dragons would definitely have the priority preference for Tiamat given how strong that individual pick is, but the Giannis could be an interesting getaway factor as well as an interesting initiation factor here for the Oni Warriors. They already have a ton of mobility, even with some of the restrictive presence that Awilish is going to introduce throughout that early and mid game. Still feel as though the mobility itself between Gilgamesh, Emoja, Guan Yu, and now this Hachiman, have to remember the mounted archery can cover a lot of ground in a very short time span, and that could be just further enhanced by a Giannis and those portals.
Well, Hachiman is going to have to use that ultimate to get out of the engage and the big circular AoE lockdown that the Jade Dragons are bringing here to game number 1 between a Cerberus and a Cthulhu. The Jade Dragons, they get some decent space control here, Taco, to round out their front line. We had mentioned how it was damage backline and jungle between Hunter and mid early. And so that means a little bit later on, your options for support and solo are going to be a little bit less. They get a Cerberus and Cthulhu. Are they happy about that?
This is definitely a prime composition, I think,
Sure.
for the Jade Dragons, because between the setup that's already available for Sam just from the kits that the Oni Warriors have drafted, combine that with the Stingent Torment out of the Cerberus, there's definitely a good amount of AoE presence that I think is going to limit a little bit of that Oni Warriors initiation, particularly looking at the Guan Yu and the Emoja, because it can be rough having that guaranteed follow-up when you're trying to deal with the chaos as well that Cthulhu is going to introduce. Vision can get a little bit clouded, but I'm mostly keeping an eye on this Hachiman and Soul, because those Soul, I think, can have big burst. Same for Hachiman, but it feels a little bit more like that shred over time potential, and that's where the concern comes in, because Jade Dragons, their backline, it's burst in an instant.
Right, yeah. I mean, the Jade Dragons, they get a couple A-tier, S-tier backliners. On the other side, though, the Oni Warriors, as far as frontline go, might get a little bit of that. I mean, you got a Gilgamesh, Yamoja, and a Guan Yu as far as catching out individual targets, or even multiple, depending on how some of those ultimates end up looking. The Oni Warriors have a pretty good draft. Do you think this Tiamat and the Artemis, and maybe even the Awilix, are going to be able to stay safe?
Maybe not so much in the early to mid game, but that's where the positioning comes into play.
Right.
I think a team as experienced as the Jade Dragons can probably anticipate that their backliners, like the Artemis, possibly even the Awilish, could be looking to get focused out early on. I'd say Awilish because Oni Warriors, they don't want to allow Awilish to try and hit that mid-game stride where she really has her peak burst potential. So if Dardas can have a solid start, and if the Hachiman is able to maintain safety throughout the duo laning phase, I think that these team fights could get interesting, just because the Oni Warriors do have a ton of self-sustain and team fight sustain. So it'll be a fun matchup, but I think that
so.
both of these teams definitely got away with compositions that they like.
Agreed. I think that's always important. You go into game one. I don't know if you have an underdog here in this one, because Oni Warriors 1 and 2, Dragons 1 and 2. The Dragons you probably would consider the favorites going into this matchup. So you look at the Oni Warriors and you just have to say, all right, did you give yourself a chance coming out of picks and bans? And I think they absolutely did. A lot of my eyes, I think, go towards Dardas here, Taco. It's been 4 kills in the last 6 games out of the mid lane, so maybe this is an opportunity to step up.
Important to remember that Darda is also one of the only members on this Oni Warriors draft dealing with a little bit of that ping discrepancy. So Soul could definitely be a little bit more on the make or break charts for him here today, but again, Soul, the Separate can deal a lot of damage, could really put a damper on the Awilish as well, because it can be hard, I think, to really lock down that Soul. We'll have to see how it plays out for them.
The Jade Dragons, the Oni Warriors, both 1 and 2 here in Phase 2. We'll see who takes this one in game number 1.
Thank you, Dave and Taco. J-Mac and Mifflin here to bring you guys the Dragons and the Warriors. We're going to have Jithan this time on our Spectator. No Doug for you guys today, unfortunately. We do got to deal with Babyface. Jithan's onto it. Both these teams coming in 1 and 2, but they're not really 1 and 2 teams. It doesn't feel like these guys should be down here at this level. They just kind of had a rough start, I think, this season.
I mean, the Jade Dragons are the playoff champions, man. I know that we're talking about on the desk a little bit who's the favorite here. I think you could still say Jade Dragons should be considered a heavy favorite. Just a little bit of a rougher start to the split so far. And taking a peek at these drafts holistically, J-Mac, I'm liking what I'm seeing from both teams. We get to see Sanford Soccer kind of go for this more early game-centric style. Around level 6 to level 10 is really where he's going to start to hit his stride. And then you've got this late-game core of Fino K and Panda Cat that's going to help out so much inside of the team fight. So I think it's really up to the Oni Warriors, especially around Fred, to set the pace.
Yeah, it really feels like they're kind of drafting around their strong suits here. They want Sam to be that big carry for them, so what did they do? They drafted 3 gods with giant knockups on them that can really kind of help favor and bring him into presence on that one. Then you got this little bubble you can build around Cuvo Fred. I mean, you've got Neil with the emojons there. It seems to be one of his primary picks, and a pick that's oftentimes banned against him as well.
Yeah, I mean, you cannot sing enough praises for Yemoja, right? The healing, the mobility you afford your team, the lockdown pressure of that ultimate. And if you take a peek at their long lane, just in general, the Oni Warriors have drafted pressure through the Yemoja, who should be able to make it a little bit easier to work their way through this early game. And then Vote can be left alone on an island in this Hachimon. Way back in Season 7, we say Hachimon, Jingwei, those are the two safe hunters in the game. You've got CC immunity from the ultimate, a nice dash. So I think that they're going to be just fine over here in the long.
Well, you can see a little bit of scuffle so far between these dual lanes. They really want to try and establish that early presence. But when it comes to, Cerberus Artemis, they're not super unsafe for the time being, but you have Hachi Yemoja against you on the flip side of that one, so there is a lot of pressure that Neil can put up for them. But most importantly, those traps from Panda Cat, those have come in pretty big in some of the more recent team fights with other teams that we've seen. Some people tend to kind of forget about those traps.
Hey, man, they're kind of invisible nowadays. They didn't used to be, but I think it was about late Season 6, early Season 7, Artemis saw a buff to her traps, extends the range you can place them down at, and also gives them a little bit of translucency on the map itself. And I like to consider Artemis the god of, if you're CC'd, expect to get CC'd even longer.
Well, Dardes is going to get CC'd pretty heavily there. Needs one more basic before into the separate. And Sam's going to pick up an early first blood on the Wheelish for the Dragons.
That does not bode well for the Warriors. Sam for Soccer already off to a great start. Should be able to go back to base and then immediately finish off that mace and take a peek at the map. Red buff invaded, purple buff getting invaded as well. Jade Dragons controlling these camps.
And this just seems to be the name of the game for the Dragons. In the last couple of games that they've had where they've gotten this early pressure, they've been invading those camps on second spawn for it. I mean, it just seems to be their namesake on it. It's working for them. I mean, look across the board. Level 4s, even a couple level 5s on there. Meanwhile, Dual Lane's still struggling to get to that level 4 point.
This is exactly what Nika was bringing up inside of that interview. He said, we're concerned about being able to control these buff rotations. That's what these teams are doing really well, closer to the top end. But one buff invade makes not for a lead. It's what you're able to do with that timer. So expect to see the Jade Dragons likely head back to base very soon. Panda Cat being so close to means that he's not going to be too great on a subsequent purple invade. But if he is able to make his way back to base and finish off that bow, his damage output is going to be crazy, and it should set the Dragons up to at least try and further push this lead.
Now, one thing I'm concerned with, Mifflin, is like the last 3-4 times that we've seen Tiamat get through in a game 1, she wins. And usually she wins pretty handedly. I'm really surprised that teams are just so willing to give up this god, especially to Hurrywin, who's won 3 of his last 3 games on this god with fairly strong slash lines. I mean, why are teams just so willing to give up this goddess?
Man, I wish I could look into the minds of some of these players. If it were me out there, I wouldn't want to play against Tiamat just about ever, but the Oni Warriors do get some pretty strong picks in response. The Yemoja and the Gilgamesh were the pick response to this Tiamat. Those are both gods that are generally banned out in that first phase as well. Is it going to be equivalent in strength to Tiamat? Well, that's yet to be seen, but it certainly has the capacity to do so. That being said, we're already looking at a 1-level deficit in the jungle. Cubo Fred level 5 to Sam's level 6. We need to see him try and speed up this pace a little bit, get involved. He's already got the Winds of Shamash available, and up against gods like Artemis or even against this Cthulhu could be very hard for them to deal with.
We'll look for a potential invade here. That red buff is set to spawn in just a moment. Neil's making his way up to the top side. Vote over at the purple. Not going to give that one up this time as PBM's rotated into the mid lane for the Dragons. They're going to try and get some very early presence here. Maybe start making their way towards solo lane or maybe try at least these back camps. Mike, very famous in this last few sets to make this early rotation up to these Harpy camps, try and see if he can get any kind of pressure, see if he can get any vision. As you can see, that Cuvo already forced to leap away from Mike.
Man, it's almost like a mix-up here. The Jade Dragons say, all right, we're not going to go for the purple buff again. We don't care about the red buff, but instead trying to put a little bit of pressure over here towards the blue. Put some pressure on Nika. Mike still hanging around, and that buff spawning right now. Expect a fight.
Oh, you can already see it. Level 7 on Fine OK. Level 5 on Mike. Cuvo and Nika here. Sam for Soccer as well. Meyer gets dropped down by Fine OK. They get the blue buff on the back end of it, and out scot-free. Didn't have to use any relics to get that one.
No relics, no ultimates, no problem here for the Jade Dragons. And so far, they have been the ones setting every single bit of the pace. It's a little bit more subdued than you might expect from the reigning champions here, but I think they're doing a great job of expanding their lead. Take a peek at the gold across the top. 6 minutes in, been relatively quiet, but over that time have already established 2,000 gold, 1,500 experience as well, and I'm not expecting it to slow down at all.
It just seems that this is the Dragons playstyle. You get that first blood, all right, that's our dominance on the map. Where do we win at mid lane, steal the red buff. Now they have to, focus more efforts towards mid, so now we can steal away the purple buff. Okay, well now they know we're going to do that. Like you said, throw the mix up. Maybe go for the blue buff this time. Dragons are doing a fantastic job of controlling this map and controlling the experience across the board for it.
Take a peek at these builds here. Interesting shift up from Sam for Soccer, going for a little bit more attack speed. Crusher in that first slot. Very often we see junglers go for the Jotun's Wrath and then immediately into the Hydra's Lament to get that cooldown reduction stacked up, but instead it's early damage output that Sam for Soccer is looking for.
Try to get some early establishment into the mid lane again. Pushing Dart is back under tower on this Soul. Has been a very hot pick recently, especially in the last couple of months of play. Soul has really kind of risen into favor, and she has that nice flexibility between this mid lane, between this dual lane. As far as kind of your preference, I mean, where would you rather have the Soul on your composition?
Man, I just love seeing Soul in mid. Her damage output is so strong. We used to say, well, Soul takes a little bit longer to come online, but in this post-boots world, I'm not sure how true that is anymore. Her damage output in the early game is pretty good. Her survivability is incredible. Great CC immunity from the ultimate as well as just burst damage. I think that this is a god that is very strong, and it's surprising that he was able to get it in the 10th pick slot.
Well, Sam is going to stare at Nika. Nika's going to stare right back at him, so there's not going to be any gank as far as that goes. But Sam might be looking to take this blue buff away. Gets the nice little knock-up on to Cuvo. Cuvo forced to run away, but FineOK is in that Descent of Madness. Will get him with the knock-up and the ultimate transformation. That's going to be another kill on the board for the Dragons. Another blue buff stolen away there as well. And Sam is still looking for more. Feather Step onto Nika, forced to run back into the tower. But I'm sure FineOK is more than happy to tank that tower up for them. Onto the cavalry charge he goes, but Nika is not safe for long. Okay, maybe he is safe.
Able to get his way out of there. It was a little bit longer on the Feather Step coming back up, but meanwhile on the left side of the map, it's equal parts dominance here for the Jade Dragons. Panda Cat trying his best to pressure out Vote. Wasn't quite on the mark with the trap there, and well, Vote can't fight inside his minion wave because we're already looking at a charged bow pickup for this Artemis. That is good AoE damage. Cuvo Fred forced to make the rotation over to alleviate some of that pressure.
We're right on the Hachiman being safe. He was safe back behind that tier 2 tower where Panda Cat has rightfully claimed that side of the map, just like he has in the last couple of games he's gotten Artemis. He even did it against, I believe it was Vote on the Uller the last time that we got to see it, where he just didn't get to leave his tower line ever. He's pushing tier 2s at 8 minutes, but again, look across the board. Another 1,000 gold has been spread out in favor of the Dragons.
So it's not just the blue buff that they lost out on, the only Warriors that is, but Cuvo Fred forced to use his relic defensively, beads down for 80 seconds. We didn't get to see the beginning of that skirmish inside of the long lane, but it was an ultimate trade between Panda Cat and Vote, and well, Vote walked away without his beads, Panda Cat maintains his, so survivability going to be favoring the long lane of the Jade Dragons for the near future, and Vote got to play very wary around this Caledonian boar. If he ever eats a trap, could very easily lose his life, has to maintain that ultimate to make sure he stays alive.
And look at the level spread across the board. A 2-level advantage for FineOK, 1 level for Sam, 1 level for Panda Cat as well. More like a level and a half probably for more than anything. But with only 2 kills, they have put this much pressure across the map. How do the Warriors even hope to kind of fight against this? Because again, they're about to lose out on another blue buff.
Well, maybe you want to get to the blue buff before it falls, and that's what Nika tried to do. Now trying to find that engage, and the rest of the boys are showing up. Jade Dragons just got to retreat.
Sam's going to leap away. PBM is here to play zone duty to make sure to keep the other 3 off, and he will do just that. Not able to get anything off of the attempted engagement there for the Warriors. The Dragons, they walk away with a blue buff, and they walk away with their lives. Or maybe not.
Yeah, PBM tries to head back in there, seeing if maybe he could poke someone out, finds Neilma for his trouble, and well, Hurrywin's got the damage.
Neilma's taking a lot of damage on that and throws up the River's Rebuke. Hurrywin gonna leap in aggressively, but now he's trapped inside the Winds of Shamash. Might be a little overzealous there for the mid laner, I say that, but Sam is here, heroic leap, and the drop kick will seal the deal for him. Sam needs one more basic, but he just can't find it. Finally leaps off the Jaguar and able to grab him.
Hey, that's the double-edged sword that is the power of Tiamat. You get a little bit overused to it. You're thinking to yourself, all right, I'm the big man on campus. I can do whatever I want, and you jump into 3 people on your own. Hurrywin trades his life for the jungler Cuvo Fred, but Jade Dragons have already built themselves such a nice buffer that it's not too bad for him. Hurrywin will lose a little bit of that level lead, but can't fault him too much. Goes for the hype play, and I'm happy to see it.
I mean, when you've got a lead like this, 3,000 gold up this early on, just take those fights. What do you got to lose? Maybe 500 gold if you die. Your team kind of has to bail you out. I mean, they've got a decent enough lead, and they don't really seem to show any signs of slowing down.
No, they don't. PBM's been allowed to do whatever he wants on the map. I haven't really seen this guy dedicate too much of his time to farming either. It's right lane pressure, left lane pressure, continually looking to invade these camps, sometimes alone. I'm loving this style from the Jade Dragons. It's almost a revitalized style, reminiscent of what we used to see when they were going by the moniker Ghost. It's just this early pressure across the board where they pose difficult questions to their oppositions. But what are you going to do? Are you going to show up and try and defend this blue buff? Well, you're not there on time. The Jade Dragons have 4 members every single rotation of it and already starting to make their way over there again.
One thing I'm noticing is a difference here. Once again, we're seeing Panda Cat go for this more bow-style build, but Vote has changed it up a little bit. He's gone for a stacking item with those Devo gloves. I mean, it feels like those stacking items have kind of fallen out of favor for the Hunter meta, aside from maybe the occasional Transcendence. What's up with the idea? Okay, and he's gone for a Benevolence as well.
Well, it's an interesting build, to say the least. I think that Devo's Glove still has its place inside the meta. It's great lifesteal. It still has a decent bit of power built up as well. And if Vote is looking to utilize his abilities for poke, make sure that ultimate deals damage, the Heavenly Banner as well, well, you can't go wrong with the Devo's Gloves, as well as survivability to deal with the poke coming through from the Vengeful Assault from Artemis, as well as the Suppress the Insolent. It's decent, but it's going to be a little bit slower inside of the team fight. Vote's going to struggle to deal that same level of auto attack damage that they're seeing from Panda Cat, and, well, the Ikavel passive already in the side of that 1v1 means that Vote likely isn't going to look for the 1v1.
Well, already over to the Scorpion. The right side one has been taken down. PBM looking to try and take this one away for himself as well, as the Jade Dragons continue to establish dominance across the board for themselves. I mean, we're looking at already a 3,500 gold lead for the Dragons. I mean, at this point, Mifflin, what do the Oni Warriors do?
They bide their time, they wait for a late game team fight, and then they utilize it. Maybe under your own Phoenix, maybe under your own tower, or wait for the Jade Dragons to go for one of these neutral objectives, open themselves up to a difficult team fight, and, well, you can defend a Gold Fury, should make it a little bit easier.
We're going to see if they can do just that for themselves. Panda Cat still pushing forward here into the duo lane. They are able to take that Scorpion in the process of it. And look what Mike has gone for. Second item after that Gauntlet of Thieves. Spear of Desolation. A bit of a little cheeky item there for him.
I mean, he's been, what, under 0 pressure so far this game. We saw the exact same thing from the 408 yesterday. When you're feeling confident, when you've got the Thieves stacked up, when you have legitimately free reign of the map, why not get a little bit more damage? Why not get a little bit of CDR under your belt as well? I like it, man. It's an aggressive style from the Jade Dragons that is now mirrored in the builds.
A little bit quieter of a game now. We had a lot of action in the first 8 or so minutes, but these teams have kind of slowed down in pace as far as fighting has gone, but the Dragons have not slowed pace on the map. 5,000 gold separate these teams, and that lead, again, it's not coming from fighting. It's not coming from getting all of these kills. It's just coming from pushing them back, keeping them on their tower lines, or even further than beyond the tower lines, keeping them all the way back at tier 2, so that way they can just keep establishing their presence throughout here, keep stealing away these camps, and Sam might just be stealing away another kill, forces out the ultimate from Vote, putting him down to a quarter health by himself.
Setting up for the Gold Fury pretty nicely is the jungler of the Jade Dragons. Neoma trying to step forward, spots out, but alone can do nothing. Instead, Gold Fury should go the way of the Dragons pretty easily here, and we can get a breakdown of exactly where this lead originated. It was a purple and red buff invade on second rotation of buffs, and then the Jade Dragons, unorthodox, decide, all right, well, we got the timer over here. Let's go bully Nika a little bit, and then it's 4 back-to-back blue buff invades, a Pyromancer takedown, and then 14 minutes into the game, they look towards the Gold Fury. It's a very different approach to the map, and it feels like the Oni Warriors weren't quite ready for it.
Well, they're looking at Final Can. I'm not sure he's the target you're able to take down. He's level 15 and still has that Descent to Madness, so he's going to be just fine. Ends up trading ult for ult there with his fellow solo laner, and I think maybe the solo lane is kind of where you want to try and establish a little bit more presence for the Warriors. Final K has kind of gone uncontested here in this right-hand side.
It might be a little too late. 2-level lead already for the Cthulhu, and, well, he's pretty tanky as well. Going to be very difficult to deal with him. Maybe you want to put a little bit more attention towards the center of the map, because that's exactly where the Jade Dragons are. Tier 1 tower falls easily, and the Oni Warriors have not put up a defense yet. You were asking earlier on, how do you get back into this game? got to stem the bleeding somewhere. You got to dig in your heels and defend somewhere on the map. And so far, we've been taking the path of least resistance. Pacifism seems to be the philosophy of the Oni Warriors, and well, that's netted them about 6,000 gold in the hole.
And that's not a fun 6,000 to be down, considering, like we said, it's only a 4-kill game. So it's not like you're fighting and fighting and fighting, you just can't get there. They're not fighting. Nobody is fighting on the side of the Warriors. They're just hitting the S key on their keyboard and walking away from their problems. And if you just keep giving them objective after objective, tower after tower, all that golden experience is going to stack up, and then you won't have that chance to fight back.
No, I think a lot of it comes from this quiet performance we've seen from the Gilgamesh. Kuvo Fred hasn't really been too proactive on the map. Does have 100% kill participation for the Oni Warriors, if you can harken back to that dive we saw from Hurrywin. That's where he picks it up. But outside of that, he has had a very quiet performance, which is only made louder by the performance we've seen from Sanford Soccer. This guy is everywhere. He's ganking the soul lane. He's forcing Vote's ultimate. He's setting up for Gold Furies. It's been a little bit of disparity here inside of jungle pressure.
And both these two teams coming into today will hold that thought. Hurrywin under a little bit of fire here. Cuba's going to bounce him off the winds, and Hurrywin will likely fall. Here it's Dardez going to be the one to pick up the final kill for him. So finally the Oni Warriors strike back and get something on the board. But now Dardez is at half health. Final K and Sam have rotated over, and that's going to be a quick death in response to their mid laner. Dragons get another kill on the board, and they might be looking for a little bit more.
They might be, but there's not much to take as of right now. Pyromancer has respawned and is the best POI on the map 17 minutes in. Once we see Hurrywin respawn, could even imagine the Jade Dragons go for an early Fire Giant here. Oni Warriors realize that they cannot step up to this Pyromancer, as it is just Nika and Neilma in range. So it's going to go the way of the Jade Dragons. That's a 1-for-1 trade, mid for mid, but with an objective going the way of the Order side team.
And not just the goal, but the experience continues to climb in favor of the Dragons. Everybody with, at minimum, a 1-level lead for themselves, aside from Hurrywin, who is down a level himself over to Dardez. So Dardez making sure to keep the farm game up for him. But 3 levels between Sam and Kuvo Fred. It seems monstrumental when it comes to the junglers.
It does, and Kuvo in a little bit of trouble here. Eats the Caledonian board, loses 80% of his HP bar, and Panic Cat, he's not concerned with the kill, doesn't want to chase it out. He's like, I'm just looking for the oracles, boys, and that's exactly what he gets.
Maybe Mike is looking for the kill, though. He uses that Ghastly Breath early to try and stack up for the stun onto himself. He's going to try and steal that red buff away, but will be unsuccessful in doing so. So Dardez will get to at least walk away with his buff this time around. But yeah, I mean, Panic Cat's already swinging early. He's got all 4 bows on the line, just needs that 5th and final item. Usually is kind of rotate over towards that kin size as far as it goes to give himself even more attack speed. And I'm a firm believer in this build. I've seen just how much power you get from going this bow build.
I mean, Silver Branch so strong for Artemis in general, as she does have one of the better attack speed stims. Neilma in a little bit of trouble himself, gets pulled in by the Stygian Torment and loses his life. But we got a little look at Dardez's damage output. Sam for Soccer tanks up the entire ultimate, gets dropped down to 10% HP. That is a silver lining for the Oni Warriors, if they could find these situations to facilitate Dardez, who is one of the only leads on their side of the map, could make it a little bit more difficult for the Jade Dragons to just do whatever they want.
But even despite Dardez having that lead, I mean, look at the item disparity. He's still a full level behind his opposition. That doesn't mean that Soul can't do the damage. Like I said, you get hit by every tick of Supernova. That's going to chunk, especially if you throw that Stellar Burst in on top of that one. So Dardez does still have some fight back into him. That Spear of the Mags and Typhon's working really well with him, going into one of the rings as well. But Sam is setting up for a gank here to establish for the Oni Fury that's going to be spawning here. Nika stepping forward as well as Kuvo, but I'm not sure if Kuvo wants to try and pick a fight with Sam at this stage.
Oni Warriors have to look for a reactive style here. Wait for the Jade Dragons to pull the Fury, regenerate that threat, and then the Warriors can step in. Use that neutral objective as an unofficial 6-man. Good poke already onto Final K, and you can already see the Oni Warriors are doing exactly that. They're waiting for something to force them to step up.
Oni Fury started up down to almost half health already, but Dragons are going to leash it as the Oni Warriors step forward. The bubble thrown out by Neil. Just does a little bit of a zoning, but Mike blinks into the back, picks up one, but Dardez will immediately drop himself down with the beads. Final K up into the madness, looking for something, but he's already so low and will fall down. Nika going to be the one to claim that kill for the side of the Warriors. Panda Cat still poking at this Fury, trying to get those Odysseus Bro procs going onto the team. Oni Warriors still holding on to that Fury, but they're just bouncing it back and forth.
It's so dangerous for the Warriors to commit, even though there is a teammate disparity here. Final K dead for 40 more seconds, but Caledonian Boar still available. Gravity Surge as well. Got to choose your fight smartly.
And Nika's going into the back. Heroic leap out of Cuvo. Fred, Hurrywin manages to find Dardes in the mix of it, and Hurrywin is still full health. He's going to throw out the knockup onto Cuvo and pick up the double kill for the mid laner. One more base to go get the triple kill onto Hurrywin. Mike has made his way back into the fight, looking to slow down the frontliners. Up onto the cavalry charge goes Nika, just looking to try and do something to Hurrywin, but he's so tanky on that ground stance. He only lost a third of his health through all of that.
It's just so difficult to deal with Tiamat when she's got the ball running, and 21 minutes into the game might be a little bit too late. Stygian Torment forces the beads off of Neoma. Nika does get pulled in, but the damage output quite not there. Instead, it is going to be a reset back to neutral, but take a peek at Sanford Soccer. He's going for the OG Shing style play. Jungler, 10% HP, can't go for a team fight? Well, maybe I just go ahead and take away someone's speed buff.
That's the most tilting thing in the game for a jungler, isn't it? You had a big old fight on that left-hand side. Say, all right, everything's over. The fight's done. We stopped in front of Fury. You come back out of base. Guys, where's my speed buff?
Yeah, Cubo Fred legitimately says, how does he have the time? Why? We were just fighting on the Gold Fury. He should have gone back to base. I saw him fall low, but unfortunately, Sanford Soccer is just too aware, too cognitive of the state of the map and realizes that is a key opportunity to go ahead and strip away something here. Speed buff being lost isn't the biggest deal in of itself, but maybe the mental hit a little bit more impactful.
And really just that experience that's denying Cuba. I mean, look, he's 4 levels down on this Gilgamesh. 2 Sanford Soccer, almost basically a full item. He's about to be completely behind on Sam, who is just looking to finish what I imagine will be that Erendite for his final item onto it. That's a bit of a rough patch for Cuba. Yeah, it's a hit in the mental for the speed buff. But I think it's just even worse because now he really doesn't have much left in the tank to fight back onto him.
But we did see that the Oni Warriors are capable of putting up a fight despite having this massive gold and XP deficit. They played adeptly around this Gold Fury, waited for the Jade Dragons to force their hand, force the situation, pull that neutral objective, and then they separated the engagement. Final K got a little overzealous in his own right, goes a little bit too deep, and by the time he descended into madness was already down to about 30% HP. The Oni Warriors have their work cut out for them. I'm not going to mince words here. This is a very difficult game to come back from, but if they keep playing to the caliber that we just saw around that Gold Fury fight, they can do it.
You see Hurrywin go for the Blood-Soaked Shroud here. We've been seeing the Vampiric Shroud kind of rise with its adjustments in that mid-season patch between the Sacrificial and the Blood-Soaked Shroud. We see Hurrywin go for the option here. I mean, what's the benefit that he gets for Blood-Soaked versus going for the Sac Shroud?
Just a little bit more protections, a little bit more survivability as well. It is interesting that he does elect to go for the Blood-Soaked, considering how well Sacrificial Shroud does synergize with Tiamat, but it's just a straight-up good item. This is something that Hindu Man has been singing from the rooftops for the longest time. Everyone's been going for their Sands of Times, their alternate timelines, their conduit gems, but the second that this item came back into the meta, the second Vampiric Shroud was available, Hindu Man screamed that we're going to see it, and, well, he writes the script, and here we are, week 3, we're finally starting to see it a little bit more.
Yeah, I think maybe that's also risen to some of the Guardians, though Final K hasn't gone for it here. In fact, he went for the Tainted Steel start up for himself, trying to counter up a little bit of that anti-heal that Nika provides and that Neil can provide for him as well. But starting up the Fire Giant is the Jade Dragons, dropping it almost to around half health so far, but it's only Panda Cat really doing any damage to it. Feels like they're just trying to go for the bait here. Nika dives into the pit. Polar Bear Mike gonna walk out of it as well as Panda Cat, seeing if they can get any kind of setup here. Meyer finds Neil. Neil's gonna be forced to use the beads out of the Gravity Surge. Final K goes into the back and into the madness he goes. Neil has no chance of making out. Final K will pick him up in that ultimate transformation. Dardes getting low as well. Knockup comes through. Gonna be immune by the Aegis. Hurrywin manages to find one, and Panda Cat the other. Final K double kill and add another one on the board for Panda Cat. A quick deicide for the Dragons.
30 seconds left on the nearest respawn, and that is a Yamoja, and a Yamoja at level 15 could see the Jade Dragons go ahead and barrel down the Phoenix or step back towards the Fire Giant. Can essentially do no wrong on the map with a lead that they've established for themselves. 12,000 up, and, well, it's gonna be Fire Giant as the target here. Gotta think they could have had the opportunity to go for that right side Phoenix and then regroup for the Fire Giant, but instead, no risk here, no risky plays. We're gonna go ahead and cross our T's, dot our I's, do whatever we have to on the map, and Sanford Soccer at least can be able to strip away this tier 2, it seems like, and then work into the Oni Warriors jungle. Every single buff on the left-hand side still up.
And look at the disparity in the Gulf War. It just continues to rise. 14,000 gold plus now separates these two teams, and a 13-4 slash line for the kill department. Jade Dragons, a bit of a slower start for them as far as the fights go, but they've really ramped it up here in the last few minutes, Mifflin, and I'm a little bit questionable on this Oni Warriors defense. I mean, that was a fight where Neil just got caught out yet again on this Yamoja, not had the most success. It feels like this Guardian in general has kind of been struggling here.
I'm not willing to say that Yamoja herself is the issue. It's a byproduct of the pace of this game, and Neilma has had a decent bit of moderate success on this god in the past. It's just that the Jade Dragons established the pace too dominantly. They were too far ahead, too early on, for really there was much for the Oni Warriors to do, and now 26 minutes in, I think we're starting to get a good look at why the Oni Warriors were playing so conflict-adverse early on. The first couple of times they take a fight does not pan out very well for them. Now, 26 minutes in, too much gold behind. I'm not sure how much I love their odds on the defense, but their composition is good at separating these engagements. If the Jade Dragons send 2 people into melee range on the Phoenix, well, Neilma can use his ultimate to separate the fight. Winds of Shamash can do largely the same thing and artificially manufacture a fight where the Oni Warriors can win.
And Final K has already taken almost all of Darda's health into the back. Gonna get a nice little bit of a heal there from Neil to make sure that he can stay alive for the time being. Nika now down to half HP, and the Winds of Shamash will zone out the rest of the team. So for now, the Phoenix defense holds strong for the Warriors. Final K in a very awkward spot for himself, down to a quarter health.
Man, to separate is such a good tool, isn't it? It just gets you out of every single situation. Dardes makes it out by the skin of his teeth.
And now Polar Bear Mike gonna jump into the back line. He's not gonna get anybody with that ultimate, unfortunately, but they will manage to get the Phoenix and maybe looking for more. Final K dashes aggressively into the back. They find Boat for Sanford Soccer. And Neil getting low as well. Panic Cat will be the one to pick him up. Nika under half. And Cuvo Fred has taken the awkward path out of the base to try and zone the rest of the Dragons away from this fight. Minion comes out, but Cuvo looks like he is long gone for now. But Hurrywind is not going to let him run away for free. He's going to keep right on his tail.
Yeah, might as well stop his back. Gotta think that someone else would have been better suited for it, as Hurrywind is playing a late game TM up, but seems like he's not too needed inside the engagement. Mid Phoenix falls down very quickly. Very little defense shown from Dardes and Nika here. Only one bird still standing for the Oni Warriors. Time to dig in your heels, boys.
And they're going for that third Phoenix immediately. Now Cuvo is finally making his way back to the base, but only because he's papped himself back for it. Hurrywind is still looking for more, as well as Sanford Soccer drop kick. Throws him off of the walls of the winds, but Hurrywind will finally, after such a long Benny Hill chase, will manage to grab him. But not before Cuvo takes down Sanford Soccer in the process of it. Vote now back on the respawn timer, and I don't think they're going to be able to go for this Titan now.
Yeah, Fire Giant power play ends in about 40 seconds, but 3 Phoenixes down. Gotta think the Jade Dragons are happy with what they've acquired so far with it. And even though Fire Giant is wearing off, we might not even see another Fire Giant go down. Would be enhanced once the Jade Dragons do get their hands on it again, but with the pace of the game, with the state of the map, with these Fireman waves already pushed up all past the center as well, gotta think the Jade Dragons can do just about anything they want. I feel like I've been saying that for the last 28 minutes, but I feel like I've been right for the last 28 minutes.
I think so onto that one. I mean, we've also seen one too many times, and by one too many times I mean more than once, teams have kind of fallen into the trap of trying to fight when all of these fire minions are pushing forward. Now you got 3 lanes of it to deal with. Oni Warriors, they're going to have to push those lanes up if they want to even attempt to stop a Fire Giant attempt here by the Jade Dragons, because if they don't, especially that left-hand side of the map, they're going to be in for a world of hurt, or at least their Titan will be in for a world of hurt.
Credit where it's due, the Oni Warriors have done a great job of keeping their Titan alive despite this massive gold disparity. Take a peek at the builds. They're not too different. We're already approaching that true 6-slotted item, but the Oni Warriors are going for a bit of a cheeky play here. We see this sometimes in the SPL. They want to see if they can catch someone out of position
Gonna wrap around, see if maybe they can find Mike or Hurry, but there's 3 from the Dragons here. Stun's not gonna find anybody. A nice Riptide will keep Hurry Wind at bay and force him to leap away. Fine in the midst of all of them. Into the madness he goes, down to a quarter health he goes as well. Just trying to play a little bit of zone, get some nice AoE damage, and gets a nice little bit of proc for Sam. Final K picks up 1, but Cuvo will finally take down the monstrous Cthulhu. Neil low, and Cuvo down. Nika under a quarter health. Neil under a quarter health. That's gonna be a full deicide on the Warriors. Jade Dragons can just push up and end this game.
Oni Warriors, man, it was a good plan if you spot someone out that isn't fine. Okay, sure, they do finally put them into a coffin, but at what cost? The cost of 5 members exactly is what happens here. At the cost of your Titan as well. Might even not have the chance to get there, do the Jade Dragons. As the fire mini waves, yeah, well, they're going to beat you there.
And all 3 lanes are going to get there before them, by the way. They might even just let it happen here. 21 seconds for the next person to come up online. They're actually just waiting.
So
they're just going to let the minions do all the work. They haven't touched it. Okay, aside from the Tiamat minions, those have come through and finally done a bit of damage there. The Jade Dragons able to close this one decisively. It took them a little while, 30 minutes. They closed this one out 21-6 Mifflin, and I think it was pretty convincing who the favor was in this one.
Oni Warriors tried their absolute best to do a PK impression, and, well, it doesn't quite pan out for them this time around. But I do like the mentality, the gumption, if you would, to stick inside of that game. I mean, not often you're 14,000 gold down at like the 22-minute mark, and you're like, yeah, guys, let's keep playing it out. And that's exactly what they did. Maybe a couple of shift-ups and P's and B's, some early game pressure from the Oni Warriors in Game 2 could alleviate some of their woes.
And with that, the Jade Dragons extend their set lead to a 1-0. We'll see if the Warriors can come back in Game 2. We're going to take it to a break. When we get back, we'll bring it back to the desk.
in game number 1, the Jade Dragons have found their footing, and it's unfortunate it's the only Warriors of the team that the Dragons had to find their footing against. Of course, we want to give shout-outs to our apparel company here in the SMITE Pro League. That's Inside Apparel Company and shop.smiteproleague.com, where you'll want to head. If you want some sweet SPL merch, make sure to head on over there as well. I know you've seen us wearing the SPL hats and hoodies and T-shirts and things like that, and you can get all of that and more at shop.smiteproleague.com. Thanks, as always, to Inside Apparel Company to be our merch provider this year in Season 8 of the SPL. So head on over to shop.smiteproleague.com and pick up some sweet SPL gear for yourself. Taco's with me to break down whatever happened there in game number 1. There were moments, and this is what I always like to say in games like that. There were moments, weren't there, where the Oni Warriors were like, all right, we have a little something going in this game as far as kills go. And I think that's the important difference here. I don't know if gold or XP, the Dragons really ever felt uncomfortable here in game 1.
I think what it really all stems down to, Dolson, is, well, we start off in the mid lane, level 3. You see Sam for Soccer collecting a very nice bounty for the first blood kill onto Dardez, and I feel like that literally just set the tone for the rest of the map. From that point onwards, it was just, they didn't need to stay in the mid lane. They just used that advantage to then kind of trickle it over into the solo lane, and unfortunately for Nika, he just felt like a punching bag in that solo lane territory. Fine, okay, Sam, Mike, they were just non-stop harassing Nika and Cuvo inside of their blue buff, and really not a whole lot left for Cuvo to do to really try and combat anything there, because he just got very heavily controlled with counter drafting, just solid and well thought out composition for the Jade Dragons. And obviously when the Cthulhu was able to be introduced into those overall team fights, it was just, it's a mess to try and keep track of.
I mean, that was nuts, right? I mean, and that's not even, it's hard to follow along with, I imagine, if you're in game and you're playing or if you're casting it, but like, it's very clear what's happening, and that there's just discourse being thrown all over the back line of that team fight. The Winds of Shamash paired pretty well with Cthulhu getting in the face of the Oni Warriors there in that game, and it was just so difficult for them to keep pace. Look, the struggles continue for this Oni Warriors team, and they got the front line they wanted, right? I mean, you got a Yamoja Gilgamesh. It just didn't really have the room to operate, or couldn't create the room to operate.
Would also expect that Tiamat just should never really make it into the hands of the Jade Dragons, because that felt like a much larger issue in conversation than the Cthulhu itself, because while Fine OK was definitely a nuisance and definitely had his presence in the picks and bans for game number 2, I think that it's really important for the Jade Dragons to not have that Tiamat option, because it's just way too much priority there for Hurry. Even fights where Cthulhu would die, we would oftentimes just see Hurrywin doing whatever he wanted in terms of free casting, because there was just so much expended to kill that Cthulhu in the first place, no resources left over to actually deal with the Tiamat.
Yeah, let's kick off those picks and bans for game number 2. And I agree with you there, Taco. My eyes are on Tiamat in this pick ban phase. Oni Warriors have first pick, so it actually might come down to the Jade Dragons feeling like they have to ban that one out if they don't want to give the Tiamat on over to Dardez. Now, 4 games out of the last 5, Hurrywind has played Tiamat, and he's won all 4 of them, and it looked absolutely incredible on that pick. So yes, I
what
think
a stat.
right in the last 6 games, 4 out of 6 games it's been Tiamat. 4 out of the last 5 though with Soul sandwiched in there. But yeah, not something I think the Oni Warriors want to go up against, but it's also not something the Jade Dragons want to go up against, being in that second pick spot. Oni Warriors probably gladly would have taken the Tiamat had it been left open. Now let's identify Sam a little bit here in the draft. Mercury, Fenrir, and then a Ymir on the other side. So Polar Bear Mike receiving a little bit of love, but I wonder when this Mercury gets out of ban prison.
Never.
Here. Ever? I mean, do you think ever? Is there a world?
Is the Jade Dragons playing, or are the Jade Dragons playing?
They are.
Yeah, you'll never see Mercury.
You don't think?
Yeah, no, not a chance.
Is it all right? I mean, this is real nitty gritty, like pick ban strategy. How much are you giving up, though? Is it in your mind, like we don't know how to play against it, or we know what's going to happen, it's just so hard because Sam's so good, and it's worth banning out the Mercury instead of something else?
A lot more of the latter,
Sure.
I think, than anything else, because Mercury is he's just got a very strong win condition behind him with that semi-global as well. I'm loving this initial aggression, though, out of the Oni Warriors, just locking in that soul from the get-go, and I think that it's a smart direction to take, but you also have to remember, Oni Warriors, they got themselves in trouble taking that Gilgamesh early on, not sold, however, that they would feel all that comfortable wanting that Awilish as a response pick here for this Gilgamesh. I think the Jade Dragons may be coming out with a slight edge here so far in the draft, Dolson, because Gilgamesh, it seems as though Cubo wanted to maybe stray away from that pick, knowing that he doesn't want to get controlled by the Awilish, but I don't think it was the Awilish alone that had all that restrictive factors with Gilgamesh. It felt like a lot of the surrounding pieces with the Awilish, like that Cthulhu and Cerberus, posed a lot more issues than anything else. But the Kuzumbo for Neil, we've definitely seen some good things happen whenever Neil has this pick, and could definitely be a very heavy harassment factor for the Artemis.
I mean, yeah, right. I mean, with Cthulhu, the discourse and the disruption is what we talked about. Kuzumbo with that ultimate can provide a little bit of that there as well. We were kind of joking, and not even so much joking, but just talking about the Artemis in the green room while that game was going on. Panda Cat just throwing out the ultimate felt like he was chunking. The boar would dash in and
I need to ask Panda how he curves his boars.
What was that movie? Is that Wanted? Is the name of the movie where they're like they learn to like flick the gun around?
I'm not
the boar
sure. I've never seen Tusky move. Like Panda Cat's just built different than every other hunter I've ever known, because it makes zero sense to me how he actually managed to get the Tusky to follow.
Well, that's just skill, right? He presses his alt button in a different way.
I don't know, man. He's got the golden touch, apparently, when he hits that 4.
He's trained the boar in a different way. How times have changed, though. Look, Giannis up against Hurrywind was a ban every single time, in the same way that Mercury for Sanford Soccer is currently a ban. But it's going to be Hurrywind Giannis here in game number 2, a chance for the Jade Dragons to take this set. Giannis, I think, has been in a intriguing spot, in my opinion, because early in Season 8, it was all Giannis all the time. It felt like every team wanted to have their mid laner play Giannis. Some could, some couldn't. Hurrywind was absolutely one that could. Where does Giannis stand in your mind right now? It's a 6th pick Giannis here for the Jade Dragons. I imagine it still looks good.
Well, for Hurrywind, it's usually almost always going to look great. I don't want to speak too early on, authority that caster's curse his way by any means, but Hurry in general, he's just got such a consistent, like, the problem with Giannis isn't necessarily all of the mobility, it's just it's the through space and time 50-50 factor. If you actually are in a stage where you're looking for those mid-game team fight objectives, and then one of your backline carries gets waxed by a through space and time, there's just not a lot for you left to do other than to try and bail out, but you usually just get caught out on the escape because of the through space and time as well. So it's just it's very annoying, I think, for any backliner, especially one like Soul. Now the Medusa being locked in. I like some of the burst presence that's available here for the Oni Warriors. It's just, again, the concerns. How well are they going to be able to move around this map, knowing that there is that threat presence of the through space and time? It also, I think, might force some hesitation in terms of just the laning phases and looking for those 1v1 potentials, because am I going to get through space and time? Am I not? I don't know. And it's that constant factor of I don't know that I think might cause the Oni Warriors to have to take the step back here, and that's not something that they should be looking to do with such an aggressive initiation composition.
My goodness. All right, so there's now lockdown added into that category as well, because we often say with the Giannis, all it takes is one, right? One through space and time, and suddenly the game, the team fight, whatever it is flipped on its head. If there's a world where the Jade Dragons are behind, suddenly they're ahead. But it's not all going to be on Hurrywind this game. You've got an Athena to provide lockdown. You've got a Terra for a little bit of lockdown. Gilgamesh. Hell, even Artemis is going to throw out that boar. There seems to just be such a high level of CC that the Giannis and the Artemis and the rest of the damage will be able to capitalize on.
These compositions for the Jade Dragons, this might be some of their best drafting yet, Dave. I'm not going to lie, because even the Earthen Fury out of the Terra, when you look at the Oni Warriors comp, Soul, Medusa, they're great for single target burst, but that's exactly what Earthen Fury is best at counteracting. And even with the introduction of Lord of the Afterlife here for the Osiris, do you really want your Osiris going that ham in the back line, knowing that there's all this mobility from the Giannis, from the Athena, and Artemis? If there's one thing that she loves, it's when her targets are actually right in front of her to be so heavily controlled. Just a very well thought out composition. I think the counter drafting was steep here for the Jade Dragons. I like this Oni Warriors composition. I can definitely see the win conditions involved. I just think that the Jade Dragons might have done this a little bit better.
Yeah, I'm wondering how the solo lane matchup's going to start to look as well, because we've started to see this rise of Guardians over in the solo lane. I'm assuming it's going to be a Sobek over there up against what could be a Terra or Athena, I suppose. So maybe not much happening in the onset of this lane, in the solo lane. But still some potential for maybe some rotations out and these Guardians to make impacts.
I think for solo lane specifically, would probably prefer to see the Terra for FineOK in this matchup, just because of the fact that if you have that Athena on Mike, then he's actually going to have a little bit more of that global presence, won't necessarily be forced to actually just reside in that solo territory if it was, Fino on the Athena, for example.
Gilgamesh definitely jungle, right?
I would have to assume so, yes. I would have to assume that Gilgamesh. But it could also be a potential for Athena jungle, Gilgamesh support. That's the problem, I think, also with this Jade Dragon's composition, though, is that there's a lot of question marks involved here just because of how interchangeable their frontline composition is alone.
Well, we've heaped praise on this Jade Dragon's draft for good reason. It's an incredible draft, I think. But you've also mentioned that the Oni Warriors have some win conditions in this game. Quick thoughts. How do the Oni Warriors win game 2?
If they're able to actually establish those picks that I think that this draft is excellent at doing without having the interference of that global presence, so really just looking at harboring in all those laning phases, then that could, leak over into some control around those objective fights, but it will be tough to execute, I think, just because of the kind of global counteraction that we see from this Jade Dragons.
Yeah, I think the way we worded it earlier, this seems like a team refocused almost, the Jade Dragons do. The drafting today has been great. The drafting specifically in Game 2 looks amazing. And this is the type of team that's not going to trip and fumble around a really good draft like this. That said, I think you bring up some really good points about the Oni Warriors. They've got a draft that can maybe take it to the Dragons. They've got to do it here in Game 2. It's J-Mac and Mifflin to take us in.
And it's going to be a tall hill for them to have to climb up here, the Jade Dragons, with a solid Game 1 victory. But it's the Oni Warriors on the back foot. J-Mac and Mifflin here with Jithens once again on the spectate for us. And looking over here, we do see the Medusa go into the duo lane. Personally, I'm kind of a preference to Medusa in the mid lane. I think she does a ton of damage. I really like it. I think kind of a shout back to Season 2 Yaman is kind of where I'm kind of seeing that goddess. But we do see Dardas go back onto that soul in this game.
I mean, cannot argue with soul damage, but I'm going to go ahead and hop on my soapbox now, J-Mac, because it's the early game. We're going to clear some buffs. I got some time to talk about it. If the Oni Warriors want to have a different performance here in Game 2, it's about getting involved earlier on. And that's not to say that some teams in the past haven't seen massive success with that pacifist style in the early. Back in Season 4, Eager, when they were around 20 minutes, if they were 4,000 gold down, we'd call that the Eager lead, or even more recently, Sanguine in Season 7. They'd always come into the game 15, 20 minutes in, 4,000 down, but they would draft around that, both Eager and Sanguine. I don't think the Oni Warriors has a draft here that outscales so well due to levels that they can allow the Jade Dragons to get off to a similar start as we saw in Game 1. I want to see them get involved earlier on, especially around Cubo Fred, and especially with the itemization he's gone for here. Mannequin Scepter is an item that falls off incredibly hard early in the game. Level 7, level 8, around that point, it really gets a lot less value, which means that we're going to have Cubo Fred on a timer for the first couple minutes of this game. We want to see some impact if you're an Oni Warriors fan.
And one thing that the desk kind of did tinker and talk about here was kind of the ambiguity of the frontline draft that the Jade Dragons have gone. We kind of all think, okay, Terran and Athena. Athena's probably going to go into the duo lane. You throw the Gilgamesh. Maybe he can go solo, flexes to jungle primarily for the most part, but they're going to stick with the Gilgamesh jungle, which we kind of expected for Sam to pick that one up. Did not fully expect the Athena to go into FineOK's hand.
Nice little blink for blink trade over here inside the long lane. But to speak to your point, I think Athena, inside of the soul lane, has her home there. She is a god that is allowed to rotate out earlier than just about anyone else. We've been seeing this new emphasis from these Guardians in solo, or even solo laners in general here in this post-boots world, on early rotations, getting involved in that 3v3 around level 5, level 6, finding that rotation on the lane. Well, Athena doesn't have to work very hard for her. She presses 4, and she teleports to anyone on her team whenever she wants, as long as that cooldown is available. So I'm expecting to see FineOK get involved early on.
Now, this is the presence they want to establish here for themselves. Get a nice little first blood onto Hurrywin and shut down that Giannis as quick as you can.
Not only are they shutting down that Giannis, but stripping away that red buff is going to be so nice for him. It can even start to work their way over towards that purple. And, well, Hurricane used his beads too, so he's going to be in a little bit of trouble for the next couple of minutes.
And Neil with his Kuzumbo already doing much better for himself in this first matchup. Ends up getting the kill for that one to get himself that little extra first blood bounty. But you can see a quick response from Sam for Soccer, going to try and invade on the opposite side, but he gets spotted out by Dardez. Not sure if he knows that Dardez saw him there. Hopefully with that ward, that'll be a bit of a telegraph for him. Ooh. Actually punts that one away and manages to steal the speed buff away from them.
Yeah, wanted to drop kick it into Dardez's face, but doesn't quite connect it there, but not punished for that one at all. And despite Cubo Fred getting a lot more XP out of this trade, invades the red and purple buff as well as confirming a couple of those neutral camps for themselves. Gotta talk about that mental stimulus, that little bit of a tilter of losing your speed buff so early on. Sam for Soccer falls behind insofar as experience, but maybe feels pretty good about himself.
And maybe a step ahead in the mental game there. I stole your second speed buff. We're not stealing your 25-minute speed buff this time.
No,
we're
stealing your
3.5-minute speed steal at this point. That's a very big presence for Sam over on that side of the map. And honestly, again, a good response for him. You lost everything on the top left side of the map. Nobody's probably over here. Just go and try for the speed.
And just to put into perspective how bad it feels to have your speed buff stolen, legitimately junglers have been complaining so much for the actual last decade that the developers have decided to put the speed buff further and further down on your side of the map. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised in a couple of patches the speed buff just spawns in your fountain, man.
It's right next to the Titan. You just walk by, you click a little button next to the Titan, and there you go. There's the speed buff. Don't even have to do it. Just ask the Titan nice and say, hey, can I just have a speed buff, please? All right, sure, here you go. They even put the Invader's Curse in there. Man, they're at our speed buff constantly. It's not far enough back. Slow them down if they try and steal it. They're still stealing it now. I mean, it's a rough life for a jungler out here.
Yeah, but despite all those odds stacked against him, somehow Sam for Soccer able to take that one away. Oni Warriors, though, got to sing praises where they're due. Do have a nice little lead here out so far, 4.5 minutes into this game. Looking to push it even further now, but defense from the Jade Dragons.
Oh, the blink in from Mike's going to get the ultimate off, and unfortunately for Panda, he gets caught out by that Petrify from Vo, who's now forced to dash away. Final K has made his rotation in as well, looking for a target, but Dardez going to get into the separate a little bit earlier than Final K was planning. Meanwhile, on the top side, Hurry and Sam are able to pick up one. Dardez on the run, going to get an early beats to stop the wall from coming through, but that's going to leave him very vulnerable for the Monolith and for PBM to pick him up.
Dardez just does not have the survivability to get out of these situations just yet. A little overextension from the Oni Warriors, but it's not a complete wash for them. We're at least able to get a kill under their belts before they're chased out. Jade Dragons picking up 2 and close up that gold gap completely now, swinging it in their favor. Just a couple hundred here, 5.5 minutes into this one. But Oni Warriors, I think, are off to a much better pace here in Game 2, playing proactively on the map, trying to establish their own pace, going for these invades. It's a much, much better look. And despite kind of stumbling here on this last attempt, I don't want to see them slow down at all.
And really, when it comes down to that fight, I think there's no other god in the game, to my thought, that can do that besides an Athena. And if you put the Athena in the dual lane, that fight doesn't happen. That fight goes 100% in favor of the Warriors, I believe. But because they put that Athena into the solo lane, Final K says, all right, cool, now I get to be part of the fight. And Nika's just left here sitting in the solo lane going, hey guys, he's on the way. Have fun.
And being a Sobek can't even deal a ton of damage to him. He's charging in my face, but so I Sickening Strike him. When he lands, he's going to be healing for a little bit less, and that's exactly how that exchange goes. Cubo Fred now putting the pressure on a Hurry when ults over the wall. Has to find the slow here, but Yanis so slippery.
Well, it's going to blink onto him, misses the sickle. The autos are doing good.
Yikes.
And manages to find him on that one, but Cubo is going to trade with his life. That one goes over to Sam for Soccer, so they get a 1-for-1 trade. Not the end of the world for the Oni Warriors, and they're still pressing forward, just like you said you need to see them do.
That's exactly what you want to see. Cannot get diminished, cannot be deterred, despite having a couple of stumbles here. And Jade Dragons are being forced to play reactively. Early rotation from Pandacat. Finds him losing out on most of his HP.
Yeah, Pandacat, you're not in a happy spot there. Dardez takes him down, and PBM manages to pick up Dardez in the process of it. They might be losing Neil, however, because he's stuck around a little too long. Has that sumo slam to run for a little bit longer. Hurrywin on the run here with Sam to try and chase him down. Threshold comes out, and they'll be able to pick up Neil pretty freely for themselves. I don't think a sumo is going to get him out of there.
Man, Final K starts charging the ult, says, all right, guys, I know you got the kill. Like, you can get it whenever you want. Just let me land first so I can get my assist. But Sam for Soccer decides that he wants the kill right now. Greater Scorpion going to go the way of the Jade Dragons on that Fire Giant side. And the Gold Fury Scorpion still available. And this seems to be a pace that the Jade Dragons are very comfortable with. They very often prioritize this right-hand side neutral objective first because Pyromancer is inherently much lower risk. Even if you have it stolen away, it's not that big a deal. If you get it for yourself, it still feels pretty good, and it's generally just easier to kill.
Can't feel good for Panda Cat there. He ate the entirety of Supernova and a Stellar Burst afterward. His entire health bar gone because of that one. He's going to have to be careful in the future on that. I don't recall if he had his beads up for that push or not, or maybe he didn't think he was going to take that much damage, but I think he learned a very hard lesson there.
But he hasn't fallen that far behind. I mean, it's about the exact same level as Vote over here inside the long lane. Vote has elected to go for a much slower build with a Transcendence, but is going to have a good deal of ability damage just now, taking over to level 9. So we'll get a good view of how far ahead he is exactly once Panda Cat starts to hit that level himself. Artemis going to scale incredibly well into the late game, but it is worth noting, Panda Cat 0-2. I don't think he's feeling too bad about it.
No, I mean, he's only sitting maybe a half level behind Vote. Dardes might be sitting against the wall for a little bit. Has to use those beads preemptively to get himself into the sap rate, and that's going to be a big win there for the Dragons. They get a relic, no ultimates necessary.
No, none whatsoever. Now the Oni Warriors are going to go ahead and reset back to neutral. Pyromancer are going to be spawning very soon here, and Soul Lane hasn't really had a lot of pressure traded one way or the other. It's generally just been Final K leaving the lane to rejoin a fight elsewhere on the map. It's even reflected in his build, going for that Talisman of Energy. Shows that he's got a little bit more emphasis put on rotations. Nika going for that same build, trying to match a little bit of what Final K is able to do with that global presence, but easier said than done as a Sobek.
Everyone's going to get shoved against the wall for you to use the through space in time, but a little too late for him onto that one. He had the beads available, but elected not to use them. Now Final K has rotated over to try and get this kill onto Dardes. The walls come through, but not enough damage, not enough forward force for the Dragon to take him down.
Maybe this was the plan from all these teams in the SPL. Ban out Hurry wins Yanis for so long that maybe it develops a little bit of rust on it. Getting caught out a couple times so far this game. 3 deaths going towards the mid laner, the Jade Dragons. But you got to trust him. Tyler is very good at this god. He's played it a whole lot in the past. Give him a little bit of time, and I'm sure he'll hit his stride.
It's one of those things to kind of note. For all of Giannis' lifespan, there's been very few players that you can say, yeah, I trust this guy's Giannis. I think Hurrywin is probably the most established player on that god out of anybody that's ever come through into the SPL. There's not too often you can say if there's one player, one god you can trust, it would be Hurrywin on Giannis. A little bit rusty here, like you said, at the start. But I mean, we're only 10 minutes in. I mean, last game we had a full 30-minute game, so he's got at least 20 minutes maybe to come back with this.
And they're completely even at this point, despite falling down so much. Huge ult, but turns into stone for his trouble. Hurrywin forced to retreat, but deals a little bit of damage to Vote. That was great reactions from the Medusa. I mean, thin margins, microseconds change how that play looks.
You can't get caught looking at a Medusa. That Petrify does a ton of damage, and even if you look away from it, it's a little bit mitigated onto that one. But, I mean, if you're a Giannis, now you lost your beads again, so this is open for Neil, but you just cannot be staring a Medusa in the face.
He just came through the wall, man. He walks through the wall. He's get hit like frame 1. I can't blame Hurrywin for that one. Does lose out on the beads, as you've already highlighted. Is going to be in a little bit of trouble for the next 2 minutes, and he's no stranger to it. He's been in trouble for a good deal of this match already, 11 minutes in. Gold Fury and Pyromancer are available to both squads. Gotta think that the Oni Warriors are going to feel a little bit more confident looking towards these neutral objectives right now, considering they've essentially got a double hunter draft between this Medusa and Soul. They can essentially solo these neutral objectives together and then utilize this stone wall front line that they've drafted for themselves. Sobek, Osiris, and Kuzumbo can all just act as goaltender once they start to establish themselves around these objectives.
And interesting to note onto it, despite the 3 deaths on Hurrywin, how aggressive he's been playing, he's only a couple hundred gold down so far to Dardes and about a level in experience as well. So he's been keeping that farm game up, and Giannis probably one of the better gods to do so. You know, the fact you can walk through just about any wall in the game, it makes it pretty easy to go to your farming spots.
But it is an important level deficit right now. Oni Warriors mid laner Dardes does have that second relic available, so it's a pretty nice power spike for the Warriors if they're able to force an engagement before Hurrywin is able to make his way back to base and get one himself. Still, beats down for 60 seconds on Hurrywin. Dardes, both relics available. Now's the time to look for an engagement.
Well, looking at Panicat and Mike here, or at least looking at the purple buff potentially, but I don't think they're going to be able to get that kind of a steal for it. They're instead going to turn their sights over to Hurrywin, uses through space in time to move aggressively towards the back line. Dardes forced into the separate very early on. Final K looking for a target to taunt in. It's going to be Vote, who dashes in aggressively onto Hurrywin and takes him down. Petrify goes through, but it's only going to hit Panicat. He's going to be forced to use the Aegis for a Vote, and, well, Caledonia Boar will make sure to shut him down.
Sanford Soccer now on the retreat, very low HP. Neilma goes into the watery grave but cannot make contact. Meanwhile, on the back line, Cubo Fred putting some work into Fine.
And Final K is going to be pushed back towards the Monolith, however. Now Cubo's the one under half. Neil might have to be careful, but Nika has made his rotation across the board. The walls come through, looking for a stun, looking at least for a defense for Pandacat. He's getting so low. Nika or Neil could be the one to shut him down here as they take down Cubo Fred. Credit to Final K on that one. But Dardes, who never went back to the base, rotates back over just to throw a nice little stellar burst and might be getting an extra kill on top of it.
Dardes in some trouble, is pulled into the shield wall. Wave cleared by Final K, at least able to get some farm before he falls down. Great rotation from Nika to change that fight up. And now Nika doing his best to keep PBM involved, but nobody in range to follow up. Meanwhile, towards the center of the map, Hurrywin was the first one to fall in that engagement, had time to respawn and go ahead and get a little bit of pressure on the map. Tier 1 tower goes the way of the Jade Dragons. Clean play across the board. This is a back and forth match, J-Mac. Oni Warriors are looking so much better.
And that's how you know a fight has gone on for so long, when Final K ults all the way across the map and Nika has that much time to rotate all the way into the duo lane to finally make his presence known. Jade Dragons, I think they need to kind of clean up how long they take these fights, because otherwise, like you said, these back and forths, never mind the through space and time, nice little shot there will push Nika and Dardes back away from there.
Hey, you guys thought you were going to get the gold free? How about a 50 cal straight to the chest? Neilma, or Hurrywin rather, very well placed on the ultimate. And if we have time to rewind back to how that initiation really started on the left-hand side, it was a sumo slam from Neilma, isolated onto Hurrywin towards his own green buff, that was immediately responded with a essentially panic ultimate from this Yanis. Goes into the lane, immediately gets picked out by Vote, and that's, again, some of that rush showing on this Yanis. Hurrywin is struggling to find his positioning so far in this game.
I think you forgot he's not playing the Tiamat, who can jump in super aggressively into the middle of everybody, use that spin in the ground stance, and get that extra protection. He's kind of playing this Giannis the same way, but Giannis is nowhere near as tanky as a Tiamat can be in these fights.
No, not at all. Beads used by Pandacat in that little skirmish on the left-hand side, and now going to be a little bit more susceptible to ganks for the near future. Oni Warriors making note of that, saying, all right, well, let's force a fight over here. Let's see if maybe Pandacat steps up. Gold Fury starting to get dropped down pretty quickly, 50%, and Jade Dragons nowhere to be seen.
Yeah, Hurrywin, no ultimate as well. No chance to steal this one away. Gold Fury goes the way of the Oni Warriors. They'll finally pick up an objective for themselves. I think that's their first major objective in this entire set for them so far. They're still just a little bit behind in gold, about 400 or 500 gold down, but they're not out of this one. This has been a much more active game in these first 15 minutes than we saw in game number 1.
Yeah, this game is dead even. I mean, the disparity that we're seeing in both experience and gold are not even worth noting. 16 minutes on into this one. With Gold Fury down, there's not much to fight over, and the same could be said of Pyromancer. The next neutral objective likely will be one of those once they respawn. Fire Giant is a ways off inside of this game. A little bit of a build roundup here. Dardes going for a lot of lifesteal. Spear of the Magus, Typhon's Fang, and some anti-heal with Divine Ruin. It's a very fast build for this soul, who's hitting her power spikes very early on, but is sacrificing a little bit of attack speed. Sometimes we see the Telkine's Ring in that third slot, or the Demonic Grip for a little bit of additional penetration and attack speed as well. It's a very ability-focused build here from Dardes, and Hurrywin going for that Chronos Pennant. That's bread and butter for Yanis. You want to be able to walk through walls every single time? Well, that's the item you go for.
Going for the Soul Gem onto it as well, but hold that as Pandacat gets caught out. I'm pretty sure he even saw them on the ward at one point, but there's just no saving you under the tower when you have Nika and Neil on these aggressive frontline Guardians. He just falls instantly.
He does. No beads available means, well, your life isn't going to be available for much longer. Pandacat in the grayscale for the next 30 seconds, and Oni Warriors keeping up this push. It's a slow rotation from Dardes, and PBM already in.
He's going to go in and get the stun onto Vo. Meanwhile, the rest of the team zoning inside the jungle. Hurrywin with the early through space and time. Not going to find a home on anybody. Sam going to throw out the Winds of Shamash as well, but it's just a zoning tool for them, so that way the Dragons can disengage and push the Warriors back.
And now what are the Oni Warriors going to do? They still have a bit of a power play while Panicat works his way through the grayscale. Tier 1 tower being looked at by Nika, but can't really do much as they soul Sobek. Meanwhile, on the other side of the map, Cuvo Fred able to strip away a blue buff, it seems like. Jade Dragons did utilize that global presence from Final K to put up a defense on their Tier 2 tower, and Oni Warriors put a lot of respect on that rotation. The second Final K shows up, they say, not much to fight over here, don't want to throw it up the risk, and immediately disengage. Gold Fury and Pyromancer still a little bit wild on their respawn, so this game should reset to neutral for the near future.
Only one tower taken away by both of these teams so far. Left side lane, Tier 1 for the Dragons is gone. Meanwhile, mid for the Warriors. And Nika is going to have to go into a very early ultimate. Jump in by Sam, but he doesn't have much chase beyond here. And with Cuvo rotating over, the Warriors will make sure that they can get Nika out of danger.
So hard to kill Sobek with the build that he's gone for. Mystical Mail, Pridwin, Talisman of Energy. That is a lot of survivability. And the damage output from the Jade Dragons, although strong, isn't essential or isn't necessarily burst damage. It's consistent damage or poke damage. Yanis is a unorthodox mage in that if he hits his ultimate, well, he's got burst. If he doesn't hit his ultimate, it's going to take a couple unstable vortexes before he finds the same amount of damage as some of these other mages. And then across the board, Athena, not really consistent damage there. He's got a good deal of burst, but relying on having beads burned already by the Oni Warriors. It's a high execution draft from the Jade Dragons, and similarly to Game 1, haven't seen too much Gilgamesh. This time, Sam for Soccer, a little bit quiet out of the jungle.
2-0-2 so far, but outside of, I'd say, the initial invasion and a little bit of skirmishes amongst kind of the mid lane, dual lane side, yeah, it hasn't been much action out of Sam for Soccer here so far in the second game, not compared to the last game where he was all over the place onto it. We'll see. Oni Warriors kind of pressing forward over towards this right-hand side of the map. Final K has to get himself out of danger with that Defender of Olympus. Now Mike pushed in to the clutches of Dardes.
And it's just pressure across the board from the Oni Warriors trying to work their way into this solo side Tier 1 tower. It's a blue buff invade attempt, and
Fire?
a successful one. Fire Giant pulled out. I like this call. They force Final K back. No global available. Means you might as well go for this burn.
Hurrywin does still have ultimate. It's going to come through. Clip the Fire Giant. That's going to set the rest of the team through. PBM gets pushed against the ring. Warriors do manage to get the Fire Giant, but what will they lose in response for it? In their eyes, they're not going to lose nothing except they'll take down Polar Bear. Mike, who pushes up without the rest of his help. Sam blinks over trying to find Cuvo, who also expends his blink to get out of danger. Now he's looking at Nika, and he's not going to have the damage to take down Nika. Dardes is already back to the tower line, and the Warriors come out not with just the FG, but a kill on top of it.
Jade Dragons getting routed in this one. That is such an intelligent play from the Oni Warriors. Final K forced to use the ultimate defensively, forced to head back to base. Let's go to the Fire Giant. Let's take this fight now. PBM on this Terra doesn't have enough disruption to stop the Oni Warriors for long enough for the rest of the Dragons to work their way in, and they get the Fire Giant. Oni Warriors don't overcommit to it either. Immediately find their pick, disengage. They trusted that Nika and Cuvo Fred, despite being deep in the enemy backline, have enough tankiness, have enough survivability to get themselves out of there. None of the backliners, the Oni Warriors, get baited in, and now we're looking at a power play for the Order side team. Fire Giant on 5 members for the next 3 minutes, and plenty of towers left on the map to get cleared out.
Now, I know it's a Cardinal sin to talk about carries trying to kill tanks, but at this point, Nika and Neil are so far up into their builds, they're so tanky, and I'm seeing minimal penetration on both of the carries for the Dragons. How in the world are they planning on killing this front line?
Maybe just utilizing the great CC that I have. I mean, Confound into Transgressor's Fate is pretty good. That's a long bit of CC. You might not have a ton of penetration inside of your build, but you got plenty of time to land your attacks onto the opposition. Oni Warriors, Cuvo Fred rather, just being a little bit annoying in the jungle, stopping a couple of backs and maybe a bit off more than he could chew.
And he's going to be down to half health. A Water Grave from Neil will make sure that he can continue the fight. Forces Sam to leap over the wall. But Cuvo Fred takes a nice little unstable vortex there from Hurrywin. That's going to push him away. Last game, we saw Sam with a 4-level lead in the jungle. This time, it's Cuvo who's got the 4-level lead up onto the Jade Dragons jungler.
And he's utilizing it to do whatever he wants on the map. I mean, walking into 4 members right there wasn't exactly easy for him. He does get a little bit of appeal from the boys to make sure he survives this one, but having been forced back to base has slowed down this push from the Oni Warriors. You want to see him start to look towards these permanent objectives, these Tier 2 towers, and so far, not a single one touched.
Hurrywin going to try and go for the Pyro Steal, but not going to be on the mark in time with that unstable vortex. A good attempt there with the through space in time. Now, Mifflin, tell me how good Pridwin is without telling me how good Pridwin is.
I don't know how to. I mean, like, is that the TikTok challenge? It's pretty good. Just watch Nika's play here, and you'll understand how good that item is. It is worth noting, hi-rez does just hit a pretty huge power spike with a Staff of Myrmidon pickup that is going to shore up a little bit of that consistent damage issue we've been seeing from the Jade Dragons. A more unstable Vortex is going to be able to pop on through, but it has been a little bit of a slow roll from the Jade Dragons taking these engagements. Oni Warriors still have about a minute left on this Fire Giant, but it's not much of a tight grouping here. I don't think they're going to look towards any of these tier 2s.
Now, I don't believe it's the first Staff of Mirrodin that we've seen since the change, but it's definitely one of the earlier ones. We don't see this item too often. What kind of difference does the Staff of Mirrodin make now on its new rework that we've seen with it as of the mid-season patch?
Man, uncapped CDR is a pretty crazy statistic. It doesn't even affect your normal CDR, so once you're at 40% normal, you can go up to 80% with this item. It means that every single one of your abilities going to be available a little bit more often than you might expect. I think it's just a good stat stick as well. Staff of Myrmidon isn't necessarily an item that you're only picking up on 1 or 2 gods nowadays. I think that you can see it generally fit into the majority of mage builds going forward. And I'm remembering back to a little Twitter interaction we saw from Pon, one of the designers, and he said, uncapped CDR might be one of my favorite stats right now. That's how strong it is, and hi-rez looking to utilize that here in Game 2 with his back up against the wall, 5,000 gold down.
I kind of like to think of it almost as a premier Habwa item as well. I mean, you throw a Crushing Wave and you get, what, Water Hands every second and a half for the next, 8 seconds afterward. I mean, kind of a nutty item when you think about it as a late game forward. We'll see if hi-rez can put any good use of it in these next few fights, but he's still kind of lacking that penetration that he needs. Even against the carries, he doesn't have any flat pen that I can see onto it that's really going to help him out.
Yeah, we might see him go for just a strong flat pen item, and by flat pen, I mean penetration like Obsidian Shard, something that is percentage-based but is built just for that penetration factor. But for now, you are right, is going to struggle up against this front line from the Oni Warriors, but it's not really his job to deal with the front line on this Yanis. Has so much mobility, is allowed to choose his targets pretty easily. He's looking for Vote, he's looking for Dardes, and that's all he's really looking for.
Well, we do see Vote again, kind of pushing towards this Transcendence build for the Medusa, not opting for the bow build, and I don't think it really works that well with the Medusa anyways. You want some hard-hitting power, you want those Petrifies to one-shot those carries. So we do see the majority of that build finished up here, going for a little bit more attack speed on the back end side of that. We haven't seen a whole lot out of Vote in the last few fights here, but every chance that he had in those duo lane fights, he was coming out on top, almost guaranteed no matter what.
And now he's looking to do that just here. Neilma blinks in and pushes hi-rez away from his portal, forces that ultimate out early, and comes back.
He got rocked right back into his own portal. Now Vote's going to have to run away. Cubo Fred at half. Petrify comes out from Vote but doesn't find anybody. And Panda finds Neil in the backside all by himself. Dardes gets bursted down by FineOK and Sam. And speaking of Sam, he's jumping right into the back and to throw the drop kick on Nika to push him under the tower. Vote going to have to go back to the fountain, and the Jade Dragons come up with a big team fight.
Every single ultimate in the game down, and the majority of the relics down on the side of Jade Dragons means that they're going to have to head back to base before they start to look towards this Fire Giant. Nika steps forward into the jaws of the beast and walks out unscathed. The Confound a little bit off the mark. Had it connected, could have cost this Sobek his life. Means that now the Oni Warriors have done a good job slowing down these backs. Nika, just by showing face, has essentially stripped away 10, 15 seconds of power play here from the Jade Dragons. Neilma already on the respawn. Darda is going to be up very soon as well. I thought this was going to be a free Fire Giant for the Jade Dragons off of that team fight, and well, now it's going to be a contested Fire Giant.
Yeah, with Darda's coming back up, Cubo Fred is now already on this side of the map. Jade Dragons will start at the Fire Giant, get down to a quarter. Nika going into the ultimate very early to try and dissuade the Dragons, but he's only going to find FineOK with the damage onto it. Fire Giant down to half. FineOK trying to play zone duty. Sam up here, they'll blink into the backline, trying to go for Nika. They're going to find Vote amongst all of it through space, and boom. Time will clip the Hunter and take him out of the picture. Now Neil has to dash out of the Fire Giant pit and into the watery grave. He will go. Stun comes out onto Nika and a portal on the backside. Dardes trying to establish his presence into the fight, but Panda Cat quickly puts him right back where he belongs, into the fountain, looking for Neil as well. hi-rez finds his second kill of the fight. Cuvo still at half health, trying to go on a full retreat. FineOK misses the Confound, however, and Cuvo may be able to make it out of this one.
Has speed buff, has a good deal of survivability, but if Confound comes back up, and it will shortly, Cuvo Fred is not going to last much longer after that. Hurrywind finally making a power play here on the Yanis. Took a little bit to get that rust off, but just a one ultimate changes that team fight completely. Darda's getting removed early on, means that the Jade Dragons we're going to have a contested Fire Giant, but do not this time around. It's going to be easy for them, going on to 5 members here, and still 3 Tier 2 towers standing for the Oni Warriors. That's a good deal of gold to swing back in favor of the Jade Dragons.
The Jade Dragons tell the Oni Warriors your free trial of the mid-game has expired. Now it's time for you to pay when it comes to the late game. Now they're going to take the Pyromancer and further push that gold lead for themselves. Levels not really that much of an issue for experience, only a level between the supports, but the gold now back to a dead even state at 30 minutes, nearly 6 slotted for all these characters. That gold meaning a little bit less and less as this game goes on.
And we're starting to approach that magical point in the game that the desk was talking about, in which this Jade Dragons draft is going to be very hard to contend with for the Oni Warriors. Just that initiation, now that they've got Fire Giant, now that everyone's got damage output off of all this CC, means that the Jade Dragons don't have to be overly choosy with their targets. They could likely shut down Cuvo or Neilma. Maybe not Nika, who is still incredibly tanky and has picked up a Spirit Robe, getting a little bit more defense once he is CC'd out. But outside of him, the Jade Dragons can just about do no wrong with their target selection. I'm excited to see how this siege looks. Oni Warriors does have decent defense. Vote is going to be very impactful on these Phoenix Sieges, on these Tower Sieges as well. That ultimate going to be very good for keeping the Jade Dragons at bay. Dardes on this Soul has a good deal of survivability with the Disapparate, as well as great ability at keeping these waves out of towers. But it isn't going to be a Tier 2 defense, and not even a soft defense from the Oni Warriors. Instead, we are dedicating our time to these Phoenixes. 30 minutes in, we're not going to run the risk.
Panic Hat going to be on the forefront of the squad with it. Level 20 full built with his bows. Got that cowl online in the kin size. He's all 6 items online ready to swing at this Phoenix. You can see just a couple of basic attacks and what they're doing to this bird, but they're not going to be able to get this Phoenix for free. You can see Neil posturing up on the right-hand side, but Mike is going to be the one to blink in and finds the Earthen Fury onto 2. That sets up for Neil and Nika to try and run into the background. I say try, but they're already zoned right back out. Sam dives in onto Dardas, gets the supernova out of him, and a panic from the mid laner.
Through space of time, just barely off the mark, would have put Dardes down, but still created plenty of space. Jade Dragons pick up that left side Phoenix, and now can go ahead and go for the easier play. Tier 2 towers, Oni Warriors have already shown that they're not willing to defend it, so that's just some gold to get picked up by the Dragons. Wave already pushed up as well, means that they're going to have an easier time on this mid-Phoenix.
Well, Nika thought about going up to the defense, and in final case, Step 4 said, you know what, never mind. You know, I don't feel like we need to deal anything with this tower here. You take it, you have your fun. Maybe they try and go for a defense here on this right Tier 2 tower. It's the only one left standing. Everybody's walking forward to it. I don't think they want to give this one up for free, but they might need to. Final K, however, he's rotated out to the top-hand side. They're, in fact, not even going for the tower themselves.
There's so much time left in this Fire Giant power play. It is surprising to see the Oni Warriors want to put up a defense here, but maybe realizing that the Jade Dragons have a lot of gold in their pockets right now. Stripped away so many towers, Gold, Fury, Phoenix as well. This is one of the better fights for the Oni Warriors to take if they are able to establish it. Jade Dragons, though, just kind of juke them out a little bit. Nika getting pulled in.
Well, Nika does still have the charge prey if he needs to get out. Instead, he'll sit himself up at the Phoenix. And that's where the Jade Dragons are going to want to get their push. They've got minions coming through, but they may not even wait for the minions. Into the back goes Neil with the Watery Grave. And Cuvo now diving into the back onto Hurrywind and Panic Cat, looking to separate the team fight. But Polar Bear Mike has picked up 1. But Cuvo finds a big double kill on the backhand side. Sam takes down Vogue. Now Neil gets a push onto Sam, pushing him away from it. And it's a 3v3 skirmish between these two teams. But the health bars are in favor of the Dragons because Sam puts Cuvo in the dirt, sends him back to the fountain. Nika at half, Neil barely at 3/4 himself.
Wow.
That wall by Mike, an incredible block. Not going to get much more from there. I don't think they're even going to be able to get this Phoenix. Well, maybe with the minions coming through, they finally will drop it.
Man, that wall was so cool. Doesn't get him much. It's just essentially Mike saying, yeah, I'm that guy. I can do that. Fine, okay. Sticking around in this engagement a little bit too long, but nobody alive on the side of Oni Warriors has any damage output, so there's not a lot of threat here for the Athena. Jade Dragons, with the very tail end of their Fire Giant power play, put a Fire Mini Wave onto the Titan. Titan and strip away that right side Phoenix. Fire Giant going to be spawning up in just under a minute, and well, Oni Warriors weren't really willing to defend tier 2s. They were barely willing to defend these Phoenixes. I don't think they step up to the neutral objective.
Not a chance they do, especially with these fire minions barreling down the left-hand side. I don't think they have a remote chance that they can go against this defense here. I mean, who on this team can realistically steal that fire giant away and get out on top of it?
Well, and get out's a little bit of a tall task.
Okay,
I mean, we get
just
send
a steal,
Dardes
maybe.
in there. Maybe he gets it with a Stellar Burst or something like that. Boat can utilize that Petrify, poke it from a range, and then slither on out of there as well. Oni Warriors, if they do step up, consider it a Hail Mary play. If they lose this engagement, if they step up to the fire and even just 2 members die and they don't get anything, that is essentially the game. Oni Warriors on the precipice of loss here.
Neil going to be the one to push forward. He threw out the Kappa earlier to try and get a little bit of vision on this squad. You can see wards are being dropped down to spot him out. And luckily for him, he's got a sentry ward there, so he'll make sure to keep vision control. But the Warriors are willing to take this gamble at the Fire Giant. But you can already see pings on that left-hand side of the map that Phoenix will be coming back up soon. But how soon is going to be soon for them, because they need to make a move now. Otherwise, those minions, they're just going to start barreling into the throne room.
And they are doing just that right now. Oni Warriors showing a lot of presence. Keep your eyes on Neil and Cuvo. Looks like they might be trying to loop around Shades of Mouse Esports from the way back when, but too little too late. Someone has to get back to base. Left side, Phoenix going to respawn very soon, and it's Vote that's going to show himself on the map.
That's half of the Titans' health gone in an instant. Fire Giant started up by the Dragons. Nika and Cuvo at the forefront of it. Neil as well trying to make their way through. The left side Phoenix has respawned. If they can hold it, they can maybe be a worthwhile trade out for them here. So far, they've just zoned them temporarily with the Fire Giant, but Panda and Mike never left the pit. It is still slowly whittling away in health. Caledonian Boar comes out. Neil going to try and go in for the steal. Jade Dragon still got the Fire Giant. Dardes gets into Zaparate, but Neil doesn't have that same luxury, and neither does Hurrywin. He trades out with Dardes. Nika loses his life, however, to Sam for Sucker, and now it's Cuvo all alone on the top side of the map. The lone survivor for the Oni Warriors, but that left side Phoenix is going to go down very soon, and Fire Minions already pushing into the throne.
And take a peek at who else is pushing in there as well. Panda Cat and Fine OK heading on to the Titan room. All Sanford Soccer and PBM have to do is stop this back from Cuvo Fred, and it seems like maybe a futile effort from the Artemis. Doesn't even need to step up. Is this 2 games in a row? They're just going to go ahead and let the Fire Minions do it themselves. Jade, Dragons, looking like the Leviathans a little bit in the disrespect department. Win it again, 2-0, but it was not easy.
No, this was not an easy fight, and really either of these games, I mean, yes, they still had that established presence in game number 1. They still had full control, but it wasn't super clean from them. This game, a lot closer for them as well. They didn't get to quite walk as cleanly into them.
No, Oni Warriors definitely made him work for it around game 2. Felt like a little bit more emphasis towards that early pressure did a lot of good for this team. But you know what, man? I don't think that the Jade Dragons are really sweating it too much. Maybe a little bit more than they would have liked here in Game 2, but still certainly a convincing win.
Yeah, it's going to be a nice 2-0 victory for them, and finally they'll start getting some wins in their column. We'll be back after the break for the desk to break down that set.
Brad's got to be careful here. I don't know if he wins this trade-up against Mondo. Well, with Fire Giant buff, though, that could really come into play a little bit. You can kind of see how it's working out. Thoughts used by Fine and the Moonlight and the extra shield from the Princess. Oh! Got a trade off of the century between the two. Drop kick into the wall is still not enough thanks to Bluestone Brooch.
Don't slip on the trail. Don't slip on the trail. Tempo, tempo. Can you keep up with my tempo? Tempo. Yeah, yeah, blowing up. C4. I just hit the Mike Jackson on my tiptoes. Oh yeah, I know we go wherever that wind blows. The endo. Don't slip on the trail. Don't slip on the. Don't slip on the. Don't slip on the trail. High key, I know. I send all of my rap foes like they my tadpoles. Yeah, yeah. Blowing up, C4. I just had to go crack now on my Depot. Yeah, yeah, that Draco bustin' like free throws. I do not miss no shots. I got the cheat code. That's why I never lose. They can't predict my moves. I'm way too smooth. Yeah. I just caught a groove. Yeah. This right here, that Charizard, the fire in the booth. Yeah, had to go right back to it. Yeah. If you ain't talking about money, please save your breath. Don't bring it up to me. Yeah, I pull up in that stunt like a 007 James Bond type movie. Yeah, hey, don't slip on the trail. No, 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 no. Don't slip on the trail. Don't slip on the. Don't slip on the. Don't slip on the trail. Tempo, tempo. You keep up with my tempo, tempo.
Same outcome, bit of a different path to get there, though. The Jade Dragons were able to take their setup against the Oni Warriors 2-0. Not without a little struggle, though. This time the Oni Warriors, they have about a 6,000 gold lead at points in the game. But the Jade Dragons, it only takes one fight to turn things around, and the Jade Dragons found it again and again and again. And eventually, they take game number 2. Shout-outs, as always, to our sponsors here, Alienware, our title sponsor in Season 8 of the SPL. They make all the action happen that you guys are watching, so make sure to go on over to smitegame.com/Alienware. Use code SMITEAW. Pick up some of that sweet Alienware gear there for yourself. And then it's at Alienware on Twitter and Instagram as well. Make sure to check them out. Thanks, Alienware, for sponsoring us here in the SPL. Taco's with me to break down not only Game 2, but this set in general. And we saw those moments from the Oni Warriors where we figured, man, maybe they can find some of those individual picks. They were fighting back pretty effectively in the early game. The kills were they even had a pretty hefty gold lead. But it's just one of those things where it always felt like the Dragons were going to find their way back in.
And I think that, again, while it didn't necessarily come solely off the back of the honest gameplay, I think it was more so just seeming like a little bit of muddling in terms of the communication there for the Oni Warriors. Some of those sieges after the fact just seemed a little bit not like fully committed. For example, when they try to go for Gold Fury as opposed to just trying to maybe look for a fight, it's just they gave the opportunities for the Jade Dragons to utilize some of that global mobility to bring themselves back into that. It also seemed as though they lost a little bit of sight on keeping track of where Vote was at times, and Vote kind of just looked like a stranded lone carry, just not really able to peel for himself, being the Medusa. Medusa also, I think, one of the more problematic hunters in general when it comes to an escape. Always feels as though that lacerate becomes the size of a football field for hitting someone whenever you're actually trying to get away from them, and vice versa. When you're actually trying to hit them, it might as well be a needle thread.
Yeah, look, Panda Cat and Hurrywin, they got jumped on a lot this game, and so the front lines had to supply that extra damage survivability. And the Jade Dragons able to get this one done. They'll move up in the standings to 4th place, tied up at 2-2 there in the wins and losses. They will have a matchup against the Bolts tomorrow, and so that'll be an important one for the Bolts to kind of keep pace up there on top. And then the Jade Dragons a chance to further their avenues back into that top 3 here in the SPL. That's our first matchup of the day. Jade Dragons, Oni Warriors. Leviathans versus the Titans will come up next here. Final thoughts, though, on the Warriors that we see here today and moving forward. It's got to be frustrating for not only them, but fans as well, where you have these you're winning the game against the Dragons by 5,000-6,000 gold. Now it's about capitalizing on that and actually closing the game out and killing the Titan.
But on that same note, this is still rather promising for the Oni Warriors in terms of review, because they can at least see it's a little bit more evident where they went wrong. And in this case, I think that it was simply just a matter of not being fully committed to one decision or the other. You could definitely see those moments of hesitation being split across the team. And if you hesitate against a team like the Jade Dragons, well, there's going to gob you up in the process, and that was more the storyline here for today.
This is a scary Jade Dragons team to be playing against. They started off the phase 0-2, have now won 2 straight sets to even things up at 2-2. Polar Bear Mike, the support for the Jade Dragons, joins me now for the post-game interview. Mike, thanks for sitting down with me first and foremost. This was a team that struggled, I think, admittedly, in the first couple of games. You've now won a couple straight. The drafting looked a lot better from you guys here today. It looks like a team that kind of refocused, reorganized, and are now making that push again here in phase 2. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think we just needed some time and some scrims is what I was trying to say, to figure things out, how we want to play and adjust picks, have new ideas for midseason, all that good stuff.
Yeah, it's plenty of growing going on, big updates, things like that, lots change. And you now have another couple games that are going to be a tough stretch for you guys. You have the Bolts tomorrow, the Kings then next weekend after that. So 2 at the moment, top 3 teams here in the SPL. What does prep look like? Does it really matter the standing of the team you're playing against, or do you prep all the same?
I don't really care about the standings a ton. I mean, of course, I think both are really good teams, but the leverage in the standings isn't really what I care about. I more care about just figuring out what we want to do as far as the meta, what we think is good, what's bad, just taking away from teams, and obviously just trying to win. They've both been looking really good, so it'll be fun to play them for sure.
I would ask you what you're going to do to beat the Bolts tomorrow, but I'll let you do all the talking on the Battleground. Mike, congrats on the win today, and thanks for sitting down with me. Everyone at home, stick around. We got another great set of the SPL coming up right after this.